All right, everyone. So we're back for more hardcore, uncensored content creator action. Fucking, if you didn't get enough of it the first time, my goodness, have we got more for you the second time? Even more Scottiejaye, Joardee, and Doublezug in your faces. Hope you can handle it. Guys, hello. Scotty, welcome, mate. Thank you so much for coming back again.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. Always happy to come and talk to you boys.
Always a pleasure. Joardee, mate, we've only got you for about 2 hours, but you've got your mum coming over to visit soon. So we appreciate you squeezing us in. Welcome back, mate.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude. Yeah, sorry I have to leave a little early. My mom's coming into town in like a couple hours, and I gotta spend time with her. I
No,
get to spend time with her, I should say.
that's all right. Don't apologize, mate. Look, I was going to do this. It's 5 a.m. here. I was going to do this at 6 a.m., but so we got enough quality time with you. That's how much your mum means to me, Joardee. I woke up
Well,
at 5 a.m. for this.
very kind of you. Thank you very much. I would not have done the same for you.
That's okay. And we're also joined by, of course, Doublezug, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having me back. We got a lot of cool stuff to discuss, so I'm excited.
Absolutely. And like, to be honest with you guys, I wasn't anticipating having this much cool shit to discuss, but yet here we are. A boatload of changes. Now, look, I wouldn't say that this was, and I'm presuming that you guys would say the same thing. I'm sure you'll tell me when we throw it to you, but I'm not like floored by the fact that, balance changes have come in MoP Classic. Okay, we were all sort of half hoping for it. I wouldn't go as far as saying expecting it because I wasn't expecting it. But to see it, I wasn't like, oh my God, what is this? I saw the notification and I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so they did do it in the end. Class balance, here we go. Open it up. I wonder what they've done. But the extent to which they've gone and put their hands in the guts of this game and gotten surgical with it in an attempt to bring some form of PvE class balance was a little bit surprising to me. This wasn't just something that I would deem to be a quick band-aid haphazard job. Oh, okay, one or two abilities. Oh fuck, okay, druids suck, let's just give them a really easy buff and kind of call it a day or whatever. I think they actually are going in and being specific with this thing, and not only just with the first round, but then a few days later or a week later, we got a second round of changes. I was going to record this last weekend, and probably a good thing we didn't because we have seen even further updates come out after the first round. The first round of testing, I think, with Heart of Fear and Terrace and whatnot. They've gone, all right, well, fuck, we've had a look at the numbers and we'll do even more for you. So active balancing on MoP Classic is happening right now, and that's really fucking exciting in my mind. So without prattling on too much about it, just before we go into the specifics of which class, won or lost or whatever, if I could just ask you guys each for your reactions as to the overall point of, fuck me, they're actually doing something with this. Scotty, how did you receive the news?
Yeah, I mean, I was more shocked by the specifics rather than the fact that they was doing class balancing. Like, I personally have been crying out for that since TBC. As in I've always seen the missing potential. Where it's like, we know the great game's great, we know the raids are great, but before the game even launches, we already know what specs are going to struggle, which specs are going to excel. So it feels more, even though it's a classic expansion where it is a re-release, so you expect it to feel relatively solved. There's not many companies that get a second chance at their own game to actually re-release the game again and look at the flaws and make them better. So I mean, I'm over the moon. Honestly, it's the most exciting build up to any of the classic expansions for me personally, and that's not just because MoP's my favorite expansion. That's because of the sensible approach they're taking to all this. Like, obviously, we're going to get into the specifics, but where they're actually, focusing on individual specs, and they're not just going, "Oh, right, bear form now does 5% more damage." It's like, no, they're doing 5% more damage, but specific to Guardian Druids. How they've sort of dug down and made these changes specific to certain specs within a class. I was kind of blown away by it, to be honest.
Very good. Joardee, how about you? What was your reaction? Do you remember where you were when the changes dropped?
I don't remember where I was, no, but I think I had a similar reaction to Scotty. The best part about this, I think, is that um, and that, I think this is more unique to MoP than it is any expansion in Classic so far, is that it means that they are going to make active tuning adjustments throughout the life cycle of MoP. So it's like they've now taken the project on of balancing, and it's on them to get it right. And so it's a much more fresh, lively version of a classic game than we've had. And I mean, they're doing everything correct. It's great. I mean, somebody looks at Kata and says, they don't care, and they look at MoP and clearly they do. So it's like, I'm very, very excited, and it bodes well for the future Classic is all.
Completely agree. Double, last but not least, go for it.
I definitely remember where I was when the changes dropped. I was putting the finishing touches on my like Mistweaver spreadsheet, and then all of a sudden I open the blue tracker and I see like 12 changes to Mistweaver. To echo what Scotty said, I think it's really cool how like surgical, and we're not just getting aura buffs, and they're precise. They're in PvE and not PvP, like spec by spec. I think there's just a lot of like attention. Seems like there's a lot of attention to detail, and definitely impressed, and way beyond my expectations for what was going to happen. I do think there's like a small minority of Classic players that kind of like everything being figured out and the meta being kind of stable. But I think for the vast majority of players, this is like a really good thing that people are going to love. And I think from what I've seen so far, at least from the healer changes, which is what I've paid the most attention to, they're doing a pretty good job. So
yeah, but
yeah,
the difference also is like the beginning of MoP didn't play the way that the classes were playing what was going to be the beginning of Classic. And I think that most of the stuff up till now in Kata and back kind of did. Like Mistweaver just wasn't working, right? And like a lot of stuff just wasn't working. And so they really needed to do something, and they're doing it, which is awesome.
Joardee, if I can keep you rolling and just say, you and I brought up, and all of us on the call were speaking a couple of weeks ago on the show, and I think it was either you or Scotty that I was talking to. It might have been you that we briefly off the cuff just said, look, class changes wouldn't, be something that would be received poorly. We're all hoping that maybe Blizzard does start to tinker with things. And I sort of said, maybe just throw the caveat on the tooltip of does not affect anything in PvP, or has no impact when cast on a player, or something as simple as that. And I'm glad that I'm so glad. I'm beyond glad. I'm ecstatic that Blizzard has actually gone down that avenue. And one of the first things at the top of the post is like, don't freak out, everyone. This will not affect PvP in any fucking way, shape, or form. And these are purely changes that take place when you're in a PvE instance in that particular spec. So we'll talk about sort of even the spec part of it after this, but just the PvP side of things, like I'm guessing if I were to ask you, was this the right call to not touch the house of cards that we referenced that is PvP? Was that the right decision? You'd probably say yes. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that PvE players at least are less concerned about balance between the specs, I think, because it's you and your friends against the computer. PvP players are super concerned about things being the way that they were, because that was the specific version of the game that things like played out that way. I sorry, I should rephrase that beginning of that. Balance is important for PvE players also, but I agree with you, and it's important to like, delineate those changes only working for PvE, because I think there's a lot of peers like Zaryu and Pika and all those guys who were like, if anything changes, it's not the MoP that I remember, and they won't be on board. No, I don't think there's many people in PvE circles that are going to be like, this isn't the game I want, and I'm not going to play now, because like everybody could see Disc Priest was busted. Everybody could see, you know, a lot of the lesser performing specs needed buffing, and so it's not like that in PvP, I don't think.
I completely agree. How about you, other guys? Scotty, if I throw it to you, I think Joardee's got a good point there. Is there a single PvE player in the world right now who had an interest in Mists of Pandaria Classic saying, oh, what the fuck? What, you know, they've gone and what have you done to my boy? You've butchered it.
No, I don't think so. I don't, you know, much like Joardee said, I don't even think PvP for most of us, like myself included, you know, whose primary focus is PvE. When I look at class changes, the thought don't even enter my mind to be like, how is this going to affect PvP? You know, I don't even think about it. So I see a change for PvE, and if I think it's positive, yeah, I don't even think about arenas and battlegrounds. And I honestly believe that that's the vast majority of people that, you know, their primary focus is PvE. But I do also appreciate the fact that there is a PvP audience. They're not quite as well represented as I personally would like. You know, I'd like to see the PvP scene actually thrive in MoP and, you know, be quite exciting to watch as well. But I feel like that's sort of tapered off in Classic. But at the same time, yeah, it's absolutely the right thing to do. You know, they've found a way to be able to make it work where they can tinker with classes in PvE without it affecting how balanced PvP is meant to be in 5.4.8. So big wins all round, in my opinion.
This is more a question for the group. You know, someone jumped in the Countdown to Classic Discord the other day and said, guys, look, we just kind of keep repeating the line that Mists of Pandaria Classic is the best that WoW PvP has ever been. And it's just this, you know, constant echoing of, you know, MoP PvP, oh my god, gold medal, it was the best, oh my god. But nobody ever says why. Now, I won't so much ask you guys to explain why. You're more than welcome to if you want to. But, you know, because it has become such a sort of readily accepted and repeated line amongst the community that, you know, the PvP was never better in this game than it was during this, you know, 24-month period or whatever that MoP was available. Same question, like Joardee alluded to, I'm getting the impression that not a single PvP player is up in arms about this. No one is going to be like, oh, this isn't fair. PvE got balance and now they're not even addressing the, you know, 3% change that fucking hunters need on their aimed shot or some shit like that. Like, personally, I'm more than fine with it. Like I said, I truly do believe that in this particular instance, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And it is the proverbial house of cards that if you touch one thing, you know, maybe it will all come crashing down, and particularly coming off of the back of Season of Discovery, where, you know, I went back in the other day and was lucky enough to be carried through Scarlet Enclave by the wonderful Manny and his fantastic guild Ominous, shout out to them, and saw the raid for the first time personally outside of a video. Fucking loved it. 10 out of 10. Can't wait to sort of talk about that when we do the SOD review. Oh my God, go and do it, guys. If you haven't done it before everyone leaves SOD, it's fucking amazing. But what I'm getting at is SOD's PvP scene was the one massive wart for me personally. I think that I understand why it wasn't a priority per se, but as a PvP player, a person who logs on and PvP is my priority over PvE. You guys know I don't raid, I jump in battlegrounds. SOD was like a really big letdown on that end. And this classic team, this 2025 classic team, whilst they're nailing PvE, really, like, the one chance they've had to do something new with PvP definitely fumbled the ball, and I'm hoping that is corrected for Classic Plus massively. So I have no issue with this team going, you know what? We need a bit more practice with PvP. We're not fucking touching MoP. Totally okay with that. So guys, do you think any PvP players are up in arms, or they should shut the fuck up and just take this as it is because it's fantastic?
I think PvP players by and large want like no changes. I think the one thing that PvP players probably majority do want is for them to make sure that PvE gear has no impact on like arenas, which I think it would be like if they do have to make any small changes to like how the PvP power system works, how potentially PvE trinkets works, to make sure that that's the case, they should do that. But like class balancing, stuff like that, I don't think it's necessary for PvP personally.
Okay, Joardee, you're going to say something?
No, I completely agree, and I think at least in Classic, there's not a big PvP population anymore. I mean, we're all in our mid-30s, right? Like I feel like PvP was a
totally.
young man's game, and I mean, I remember I arenaed a fair amount in TBC, but since Wrath, I kind of have stopped, and I don't want to say it's not as important, but I feel like them focusing on what a majority of the players are playing makes sense from a business perspective. And for PvP, they can just be like, hey, we're not going to touch it. Outside of maybe one or two like tiny, things that need adjusting. It is what it is. And I don't think anyone's going to fault them for that.
Sweet of you to say, Joardee. I'm 42 years young, but definitely happy to act like I'm in my mid-30s. So I'll take it.
Yeah, I think the average age. I don't know what it is, but it. Have you guys ever looked at your audience metrics and seen like what the average age is? I find that fascinating.
Oh, it would definitely. I'm sure if you're getting your YouTube demographics back, I would bet dollars to donuts the average age is something like, I don't know, 28. But I always say the average Classic player is probably around the 32 to 34 mark, but YouTube would skew
I think it's
younger.
higher than 28, but I'm gonna go look.
Yeah, okay.
It's always funny when you find like the one Zoomer that plays Classic. Like we have a guy in our guild who started with Wrath Classic, had never played WoW before.
Right. Squeaky
and
voice.
That was the first version of the game he played.
Right.
And it's like there's some needles in the haystack there, but I think by and large it is it's us older folks.
Oh, definitely. All right, boys, look, let's get into the specifics of things now that we've sort of talked about our feelings about the more global issue. This will be the part of the podcast I've been dying to hear from you guys on. Okay, sorry, my cat's just clawing at the door. So, look, let's start with... Now, there have been sort of 3 rounds of changes, or 3 posts, I should say, with the initial huge, news with all the changes listed. And then with more testing, we've got some, a few very notable refinements. So we'll just sort of update as we talk about everything. But I guess we'll just go through it alphabetically as Blizzard addressed it at the time. And all of you will have had some experience with all these classes to the point that we can discuss it at least a little bit, I'm sure. We'll start with Druid and Scotty. I know that Druid is a class that's quite near and dear to your heart along with the Monk. So, look, we did our fun, the fun tier list the other day, which I know is such a cop-out because, like, I don't know enough about the game to do a balance tier list, so I just said fuck it, let's just do a fun tier list, and we had a lot of fun doing that. Luckily now obviously that's the only tier list that hasn't been fucking nuked by all these changes, so I'm happy with that. Scotty, I know you're not a fan of tier lists, neither am I share the same sentiment that you do, that obviously we just do things for content's sake and people need something, but ranking the classes and sort of promoting playing things because they're the best as opposed to what you enjoy is something that irks me as well. But either way, all the tier lists have been blown up and people can go and have to fucking test these things themselves now. But Druid, mate, we said on this fun tier list that, look, your balanced Druids are, they're not very strong in MoP, and they were kind of one of the outliers, one of the few and rare outliers of MoP that really was left by the wayside, where all of these classes are fun, they're so great, oh my god, the MoP class design, get in there and try them all, they're fantastic, but balanced Druids, yet again, feeling a little hard done by. Well, Blizzard stepped in and done a rather sweeping change without having to be overly specific. They've just gone, you know what, fuck it. Moonkin form now does just a flat, 10% damage increase on nature and arcane damage. So have that, Druids. Fantastic. I presume they're all cheering. Scotty, you've done the testing. I'll just mention as well for balance that Shooting Stars, they've said, will no longer split its chance to activate across multiple targets. Scotty, you've done some of the testing. What were your thoughts on the balance druids? Do you have any, they seem to be everywhere. Did you have a balance enthusiast who was over the moon about this in your guild?
Well, I mean, the only balance druid I play with is Go. I'll be honest with you. And literally outside of Go, we would not have a balance druid at all. And that's not for any specific reason. We just haven't got a balance druid. But they needed it. They needed arguably more than this, to be honest with you, because from what I've seen, there are some exceptional balance druids that are doing okay. But I would say there's 3 specs that are really important if you want to try and squash people just stacking hunters, and that's the 3 hybrid casters. So druids, priests, and shamans. The ones that bring the 5% spell haste. And this is like when they removed the 5% spell haste pet, took it away in PvE from hunters. Obviously, I thought that was a terrible idea, and they went back on it anyway. But these are the classes these are the specs that need some love. As I say, from my experience, again, like Doublezug, you've probably been doing a lot of beta like raid tests. So have you, Joardee? You may have seen different to me, but Balance Druid out of the 3, especially with the Shadow Priest now having another buff on Shadow Word Pain, like 18% or whatever it was, Balance Druid definitely seemed like one that needed some love. And I'm still not sure if the current buffs that it's just got is still going to be enough.
Either of you other two know much or care much about the balance changes?
I definitely agree. It's probably a little bit too little. They could definitely do with a little bit more of a bump, I think, especially compared to, like Scotty said, Shadow Priest and Elemental Shaman.
So,
but, I mean, overall, great changes. I mean, they just need a little bit more buff, in my opinion.
Right. So, Scotty, was Go still hovering around the bottom of the meters in your latest round of testing? I mean, that might be a little bit of user issue on our old friend Go's behalf.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I would never take just like one person's isolated damage as an example. Obviously, I spend a lot of time looking at logs with multiple people in the guild, and obviously that kind of thing interests me. And now Well Sim's got like an alpha version up for different specs as well. That's obviously available to everyone. I just feel like just across the board, what I was seeing from Balance Druids was a little on the low side. Obviously, the buff that they got helped. Don't get me wrong, but is it enough for me? Like as someone who runs raids, would I go? I want to take a Balance Druid. I woun't. I'd still take another hunter and bring get the 5% spell haste from a hunter that's going to just do more damage. And I know there's like utility that a druid brings and stuff, but in tier 14, there's not really that many places where you're leaving yourself at a disadvantage by not having a druid in the group.
I can see Go raiding shitface, sitting on the couch, hitting his keyboard from afar with a 10-foot stick a la Homer in The Simpsons, going, oh, this class is fucked. I need a 200% increase. This is ridiculous. That's something he would do.
Well, I've raided with Go for quite a while. Go's the reason I started playing on NA servers. Obviously, I joined NA servers. I actually joined NA servers during TBC for Sunwell and Black Temple. But I properly started raiding on NA because of Go. So I know he can play Boomy. He used to do well all through Wrath, all through Kata when I've seen him raiding. So I'm hoping it's not a user issue with him, but he's damaged. We're talking like there were certain fights where the Disc Priest was keeping up with him.
Yeah, I kid, of course. But Scotty, that's a beautiful love story. This is the long distance relationship that worked. You fell in love from across the pond, and you moved for him and got the working visa and everything coming over to NA.
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. You love to see it. All right. Guys, we'll keep going through Druid and knock it off. Ferals, you'll have to let me know, guys, by the way, because I've got all the posts open. But if I say something that has been reverted since, just say, Josh, this one's actually changed. Ferals, once again. So this one I was a bit unsure about. This seemed to be like a... Let me know if this is a weird Sweat Lord thing, or if like, no, Josh, every Druid knows you have to do this. Because I don't play Feral Druid, so I know nothing about it. But Feral's getting Nature's Swiftness, and it's something about popping the healing touch at the start of the fight for the proc or some shit. What's the deal with this? Is this a very, very welcome change, or is this just for Sweat Lords?
This is huge. This is huge, and for everyone, like as in, it all revolves around using one talent. Like all revolves around Dreamer Cenarius. But yeah, this is massive because you would heal in touch yourself before the pull anyway. So you'd start with two stacks of Dreamer Cenarius. But this literally means that you don't have to wait for a full cycle of your rotation before you can get buffed bleeds on. Like this is massive. Like I was well excited when I saw this.
Very good.
It's similar to the Shadow Priest changes too, where they're gonna like go into the pull with orbs. It's just a really nice quality of life. I mean, it's a slight DPS buff, but it's mostly just quality of life, and it's really good. I think they're doing a lot of really good quality of life changes overall, and this is just one of them. So
Well, this one
Yeah,
really...
and the thing is, even just outside of the pool, like midway through a fight, let's say your trinkets have procced and your predatory swiftness, which is what you use to use instant cast healing touches, let's say that's just faded because you didn't make it to 4 combo points. Because like the standard way would be to use your instant heal to then buff your 5th combo point, which would be Rake, and then obviously Rip, which will be you'll use that as there'll be the 2 abilities that get buffed. But now there's a lot less reliance on like praying for crits to get through the 5 combo points quicker, because you've got that nature swiftness as a fallback. Like it's going to help with the opener, and then it's always going to help at least once during the fight as well, when the stars align in terms of like trinket procs, and maybe you've got your NG gloves ready, and then now you've got pure control over getting those 2 buffed bleeds on as well. I love it.
It's interesting hearing, because I was talking to somebody who knows Feral super well, and they were initially super excited about this, but then I mean it's only a buff, but for the record, but then once they factored in that like the RPPM stuff is different than they expected, and trinkets aren't proccing on pull as reliably as they wanted, this was like a much more minor thing than expected, I think. And so it's definitely good, and it makes things a lot easier for Feral, and I think they need a little bit of love to begin with. But I think that this was just like a way to say, hey, we know this rotation off the rip kind of sucks. We want to make it nicer for you, but it's not like a huge DPS increase. It just feels less clunky, which I think everybody is happy about. So
yeah, it's not very measurable, for sure. Yeah, you couldn't say, "Oh, I'm going to get 2k extra DPS from this," because ultimately there will be times in a fight, and as you get better gear as well, so you've got much higher levels of crit, you need it less, so you'll end up having less reliance on it. But again, just as someone who's played Feral DPS for a very, very, very long time, it's still just an amazing change. But 100% agree with Joardee. It is definitely. Yeah, it's more smooth out the rotation, better quality of life, maybe making it a little bit more newer player friendly, because to really get the most out of a Feral Druid, you need to be playing Dreamer Cenarius, but it does then make a already quite convoluted rotation even more complicated. So yeah, it's just all round positive. But yeah, I do agree. Like it's not all of a sudden going to make Ferals do another 10k DPS.
Well,
the thing that I
compare
think
it to a little bit is if you play Kata Fire Mage, it's almost like every minute you get just a deterministic Fire Blast proc or something. It doesn't actually really increase your damage that much, but it just smooths out those like 1% low pulls where you get really bad RNG and it feels awful. So it's not like a huge buff, but it's just nice smoothing out of the rotation.
I think as a person who's not playing Feral and doesn't really care how hard their rotation is, the thing that I'm liking the most about it is they can't be like, I don't want to battle res because it fucking sucks and breaks my rotation. They'll stop complaining about that now because they have a 1 minute instant battle res button, which is really nice.
It triggers me when you say stuff like that, Joardee, that Druids bitching about having to battle res because of their damage, because I just go,
I mean, to be fair, like their bleeds are very fiddly. Like it's important for them to be able to keep them up for their damage to, but like, and of all the classes, them swapping targets is the hardest. And so, you know, they're already dealing with a lot. So
I said battle res is one of my
when someone
favorite.
says they don't want a battle res, I just lose my
It's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite buttons to press.
We love the DPS complaining about battle res because it gives us a reason to bring a resto druid. Let's be real.
As a feral DPS, I have very selective hearing when someone's calling for a battle res.
I can imagine. I know it's rife within the community. I love pressing battle res, whether it's a hard cast or not. Obviously, it's much better to get the instant cast. But like now, ferals have the opportunity. See, because I'm like, I don't know, a weirdo. I see this and go, oh, now I have an opportunity as a feral player for those clutch like insta, like, don't worry, boss, I'm already on it. Nature swiftness, battle res. Look, he's back in the fight 1.5 seconds after he fucking died. But anyway, Scotty, this is the kind of change that I love hearing you so passionate about it. This is one of those ones where I sort of feel it's so different to the balance change in a way, in that we were like, when I thought of what could potentially come with MoP class balance changes, like I said earlier, my mind really did just go down the avenue of, oh, they'll do, you know, I don't want to call it lazy, but like the easy kind of changes with just a 10% flat buff to damage or whatnot. When you see a change like this with Feral, which is so, I don't want to call it niche, but so hyper specific and focused in on one little thing in a rotation, like you say, as an opener, I really feel like, you know, the classic team gets so much shit, and you see a change like this and I'm like, oh, they actually play/know this game. They like, whether they've played the living fuck out of it in preparation for the development, or, you know, have someone, if I was on the team, I'd have the intern just trawling every fucking forum post from 12 years ago going, bring me every common bitching point, that no matter how niche it is, and something like this winds up on the table and you say, oh, we found, you know, fucking 184 posts from players 12 years ago bitching about the fact that ferals couldn't have nature swiftness. And they go, oh, yeah, okay, fuck it, let's do it. That seems like a good quality of life thing. Like, they really seem to know the game well, intimately, if they're doing stuff like this, doesn't it seem, Scotty?
Yeah, exactly. And I 100% agree. I was just expecting, oh, you know, feral DPS, they need some, you know, they need some love. We'll just give them 5% more damage on shred. Or, yeah, you know, something, yeah, boring. Maybe effective, but boring. You know, this just adds, well, like I said right at the start, it's the like how specific they've been with proper targeted changes, rather than just blanket buffs to different specs to basically just make numbers look better. You know, they're not worrying too much, by the looks of it at the moment, around specifically numbers. Like, we have to get everyone doing around the same damage. It's like, that outside of them obviously trying to create balance, they're also just trying to remove pain points in rotations that are far more noticeable in the first phase. Because again, like I said, this, while having nature swiftness is going to be amazing, like early on, as the gear levels get better, and you will just naturally become less reliant on it anyway. You know, so it's smoothing out and maybe fixing what is an issue now that wouldn't be an issue later. Which is what I like to see. Yeah, a little bit of thought actually going into it.
I know this isn't the case, but I've always laughed at the prospect of things like this, Scotty, when I sit there and daydream going like, you know, well, now that they've got the data from their secret operation that is Stormforge, you know, Blizzard secretly behind the scenes running a private server and gathering all the information as a beta, as the true beta for all the changes here. It's not the case. Obviously, Blizzard definitely doesn't run a private server, but I always laugh going, wouldn't that be funny if that bombshell, and a journalist unveiled that bombshell one day?
Yeah, and it turns out they're making more money from their private servers than they are their official Blizzard servers.
Exactly. My other I addressed my other favorite conspiracy theory. I think someone brought up the other day, the old one that Countdown to Classic is actually secretly. I secretly work for Blizzard, and this has all been a huge psyop and marketing operation, which has always been a favorite one of mine.
I feel like you're way too critical for that to be the case.
That, and I said the swearing is the giveaway. I don't think a Blizzard product would quite allow the language that I use on this show.
If anybody's a psyop, it's probably me, just because.
Here we go.
I'm very rarely critical.
We're
Scottie's been very over the years.
We're through the looking glass here, people. Not critical of Blizzard, Joardee, and lives in California. My God.
True.
We've busted it up wide open. All right. Guys, let's go through to the, where is it? The Guardian and Resto changes really quick. Just rip it off. Great one. Maul, cost changed to 20, was 30. Maul is effectively their heroic strike, isn't it, Scotty? This was, I presume, explain to me why Druids get this, but Warriors, I mean, I know why, but explain why Warriors don't get Heroic Strike dropped to a 20 rage cost, but Druids get this.
Well, I mean, Druid's got practically no buttons to press. I mean, that's a big part of it. You're quite reliant on Maul. I mean, I know we're going to go through in order, but there was a far more meaningful change to Guardian, which was 5%, all damage by 5% in bear form increased. Whereas this, I'll be honest with you, I don't play a lot of bear. I actively try to avoid tanking as a druid, just because I think it is one of the most. As much as I love druid, all specs of druid, I hate tanking as a bear because you just feel like a sack of meat just stood there taking damage, And I know some people like that, but it's not for me. So this is just to help with the rotation a little bit, which already is fairly non-existent. I don't know. I read this change and it weren't one that I even cared about. I'll be honest with you. To the point where until you just mentioned it, I forgot it even happened.
Fair enough.
It's just a way of giving them a little bit more rage to smooth the rotation out without relying on mangle random procs. So I think it's kind of boring, but it's overall good, obviously.
Yeah.
All right.
I wouldn't be surprised if I think Feral's probably in last place now of the 5 tanks, and I wouldn't be surprised if they get another small bump to try to bring it into line.
Get people playing.
What that bump is, I don't know. What does Feral specialize in MoP? I don't really play with the Feral Druid tank.
The problem is they're kind of like Prop Pally rather, where they have a threshold. Once you get enough crit, as far as I know, they kind of come online where they get crit capped. But in the same way, the Prop L gets enough haste and then kind of turns on. So it's kind of hard to balance that. Where do you let them get to that threshold earlier? Do you buff everything, and then when they get to that threshold later, you nerf everything?
Well, I think the difference also is Prop Paladin has more utility than a Guardian Druid, right?
100%.
Bop, bubble, lots of small things that Paladin has that the Druid doesn't. I mean, Symbiosis is really a strong cooldown or strong thing, depending on how well you use it. God, I love Symbiosis, by the way. I know people think it was dumb, but I think it's the coolest, thing in raiding, just because the amount of options you have. But I don't know. I feel what niche do they serve in the 5 tanks?
Well, they got changed, and it's what ruined, MoP ruined the Guardian or the Feral Druid's niche. I mean, I've been saying to loads of people that if you want to fix Feral Druid, as in Feral tank specifically, you give them Savage Roar. That's it. So they can go in cat form when they're off tanking and actually be able to do reasonable damage. I'm not saying give them the whole cat toolkit, the whole feral cat toolkit, but just Savage Roar, so they can maintain Savage Roar and do reasonable damage when they're not actually tanking. Because I don't as a tank, there's nothing wrong with Guardian, and like Doublezug said, they do, as they get more crit, they do come online, but still. Yet to your point, Joardee, which would have been my comeback if I'd have spoke next, it would have been I'd still rather a Prop Paladin. They're both going to come online around the same time. As Feral gets more levels of crit, the Prop Paladin's going to get more levels of haste. But you take the Prop Paladin overall, which is just a better tank and just brings more to a raid. Like I would, I would personally. I'm not saying everyone would. Some people might want a feral druid, but yeah, I think the niche that has been the feral tank for all this time and what's worked for it is the fact that you're kind of not being punished when your off tank stood there not having to do anything, and they can just go cat and do damage. That with that removed in MoP, that's why I don't want to run a feral tank in any of our raids because they don't do the damage.
What if Savage Roar had a similar effect to Skull Banner? Would that be enough? Probably not.
In terms of what?
I'm just looking
Like
for
adding
ways
raid
to like
DPS
give
equivalent
it a
to Skull Banner.
yeah.
I could be. I think the problem here is like whenever you add very unique utility to any spec, a lot of the time, if it's powerful enough, it just means that spec is always taken.
Yeah,
So like,
fair enough.
if one off tank does just significantly more DPS, you just always take it if the tanking is comparable enough. So you either have to make the tanking super weak, or you need to make the other off tanks do similar DPS. And that's like if you look back in previous versions, like if you're a Guardian Druid player, it's really cool, right? Because almost every expansion they're the best off tank because they have that unique thing of being able to go into cat. But if you play any of the other specs and you want to be an off tank, like you're just kind of screwed. So I feel like if you go that direction in terms of fixing it, it also creates another problem. It's kind of similar to how the healers work now with like post kata where they added atonement healing. Some of the healers do damage and some don't. And if the healing and cooldowns are comparable, you just always take the healer that does free damage because it's so impactful. And like that's what the situation was previous to these changes with Disc. Disc was just like the best healer by far, and it also did 40% of a DPS. So like it damage like that introduces balancing problems, but I think, with how low Guardian Druid damage looks from the logs I've seen, they could definitely use an increase. I just don't know if like making them the default off tank is a good choice.
Fair enough.
I'll just add in that one of the changes a few days ago added in after the initial change was I forgot to mention for Balanced Druids, Force of Nature also now does 9.1% increased damage, so that's great to go along with the Moonkin form stuff. But the last one for Druids, we'll just wrap it up. Zug, I'll keep you going and just say that, as a person who will be, when I do PvE content, which is fairly often because I run a shitload of dungeons, and I'll be running a shitload of these celestial dungeons that we'll talk about eventually well down the track. Resto Druid got a flat 5% healing increase. And, Zug, as a healing enthusiast, you've been diving deep into all of the healing changes, and you're absolutely ensconced in everything that they're doing with this stuff. But, it's interesting that there are classes that are perceived as strong still receiving buffs, and that's great. It seems no one seems to really have the ones that have been outliers that have been really weird changes, like the Hunter one, seem to have been addressed. But I don't perceive this as a weird change at all. But like Resto Druids were strong, and to get a 5% buff is like great, okay, thank you. But Zug, I'm presuming you're going to say that there's so much in the war to be waged against Resto Shaman and Disc Priest because they have all that raid utility that's, you could argue, even more needs to be done. So how do you feel about this Resto Druid change?
I think the Resto Druid changes are obviously like kind of the most boring basic changes across all the healers. Just a 5% aura buff. Like, is it super interesting? No, but I think Resto Druid was like the most balanced healer pre-changes. It did pretty good HPS, had nice raid utility, had like decent cooldowns and some passive damage contribution. It wasn't like way out of whack in any of those zones. It was just generically like pretty good at everything. And so I think not really touching them too much and trying to get the other healers to within the Resto Druid range of power is a good strategy. And I think that's kind of like what they're doing. That's at least what I see from the changes, is they're trying to kind of tune things around Resto Druid, which is why it isn't getting that many changes. Although in the current landscape, I think they could use a little bit more ups, maybe. But
Scotty and Double, do you guys know the next? We kind of know what the damage profiles are like in the first phase, but like in Throne of Thunder and Siege, does a Resto Druid become a little bit more reliable because the damage patterns are more steady, or like what does it look like over time? Will it be less good? Like,
No, I mean Resto Druid. Yeah, it don't again because everything before the changes it makes it difficult. Like I can't answer to be honest with you until we actually see it like on the beta
mhm,
because even Mogasham Vaults, Heart of Fear, Terrace, like all of them from my perspective, compared to what I'm used to, the damage seems a lot lower overall anyway.
oh,
Like
really
just
low.
even on normal, yeah. I honestly like I was using normal as an example in a video recently where like normal Heart of Fear, they just practically felt like there was zero damage at all. But even normal Heart of Fear on Stormforge like was dangerous. Like some of the mechanics were still dangerous. So I feel like the outgoing damage in general in Classic seems a bit lower for whatever reason that is. Um, but yeah, when it comes to Throne of Thunder, there's a lot more of those sort of real, maybe throughput fights, where you kind of everyone's health bars do look a little bit more ping pongy. Think maybe like Madness. I'd say, Madness in when you're fighting one of the wings or tentacles. Everyone's health is kind of like
Mhm,
dipping and then flying up. Some of the fights are a little bit more like that which would then start to favor the more well, you'd think it starts to favor the more HPS stack up and just do loads of
mhm,
healers like Resto Druid, Mistweaver. But at the same time, because of our everything was balanced around final patch state, it was still just going to be Resto Shaman and Disc Priest,
mhm.
wasn't it?
Interesting.
Yeah, 100%. I think from the testing I've done, it does feel like the rot damage specifically in this phase is lower than private servers. But in Throne and in Siege, I think there are more, like Scotty said, there are more of those like rottier fights, which does benefit the obviously higher HPS consistent healers. But the thing is, like, MoP is just very cooldown centric in its design, which benefits, specs like Shaman, Discipline Priest. So I think it's good that those specs have been tuned down to compensate a little bit. But I think Resto Druid might need a little bit more if we go in with the current tuning, because some of the other healers have gotten adjusted up a little bit more, like past Resto Druid in my view. And their unique utility is strong. Like you want a roar, you want a symbiosis. Roots are like okay on basically one fight in phase one, right? You kind of need them, but overall, I think it's like decently balanced. It's not like in a terrible spot or anything.
All right. Guys, we'll move on to Priest because I want to tackle this. There's a fair bit to go through, and I want to get through this while Joardee's still with us and fresh, and he doesn't have to run away straight away. He's still got a good hour with us. So, Joardee, let's get you syncing. You and Double, I'm sure we'll have a lot to say about this, and then I might do a couple more of the healing classes after this, so we make the most of you while we've got you here. Look, this is a tough one to discuss, Priest, because this is the one that they do seem to be bouncing back and forth on a lot about. Just the amount of patch notes, if you will, that we've gotten from them just over the last week is extensive, where they're really trying to, buff Holy, bring discipline down a notch. They clearly really want to avoid, because we'll completely blame you and Double here. They really want to avoid people following the advice online, which is just, if you're not a Resto Shaman or a discipline Priest, kind of what are you doing if you're a raider, which is the pervasive theory. It's the subtext through all the content at the end of the day is just be Resto or be Disc or fuck off if you want to raid. I'm paraphrasing and massively overgeneralizing, but of course you still play what you want. But those classes with their utility, with their raid cooldowns, are still considered quote unquote the best. I'm not playing one because I'm not a fucking sheep. But anyway,
What are you gonna play?
I'm playing Resto Druid.
Okay, cool.
So Joardee, hold my hand as we go through this and just yell out what's different. Now, I think it's probably best to start off with even though it's been fixed, start out with a little bit of a controversy, which you were up in arms about at the time, and they've since reverted. Mate, talk to me about, the emotional roller coaster you went through with the Divine Star and Halo change, because initially they came out and said, all right, guys, here's what we're going to do. Divine Star and Halo now, obey the cap rules. So they did a target cap on it, and they go, okay, 20 targets for damage, six targets for healing before they start splitting the effects total numbers. Eat that, priest. Mate, talk to me about that one.
See, it's funny because I was always very suspicious of this in that patch note, because it was like, how do you calculate who it's gonna hit? Because it hits in a line at different times, so it doesn't really make sense to change that to a capped thing unless they do some weird calculation that the heals don't land until it arrives back at you or something. I don't know. Either way, the cap was sad because after the first round, when did the class balancing changes come in? It was after the first round of Mogoshan, or the second round of Mogoshan.
Yeah, hang on, I'll give you the date. It was.
So we did 2 weekends of
ago.
Mogoshan, and Priest felt busted as fuck, and I think everybody was like, this is probably not good for the game. Even the disc priests were like, this is not good for the game. Like it's not fun to stack 2 classes for your healers.
Were they more powerful than even you guys thought you'd be?
I don't know that much about MoP. I just walked in and was like, Jesus Christ, I pressed 3 buttons and I'm just blasting. It's like, it's insane. You didn't have to push Spirit Shell ever. Like, it was just bonkers. And
I mean, there's a reason I was glazing them in all my videos so hard. It's I wasn't overstating anything. They're disgusting.
Sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of the information that I get about the healers comes from Doublezug, and the only first person account I have is the raid test weekends, right? Because 5-mans don't really count. You're not healing with other healers, and the raids are really where you get a sense of what the utility and the output for a lot of stuff is.
Yeah.
And so
and the mouth, so
really,
you're saying basically the mouth feel was, even to someone like you with no MoP experience, was like, this is gross.
I mean, at a certain point, I was like, let's just stop pushing Divine Star because you don't need the healing and it's not worth the damage. We're just doing enough atonement healing that you don't need any of your HPS stuff. You just need to do damage.
Yeah.
And that doesn't feel good to sideline the kit. And Divine Star is insane. It's an insane button. The whole raid goes to 100% once it hits. It might as well be a revival. So it was like, it just felt bad. And I, at the same time, I don't want to, don't misquote me. I think it was the most fun I've ever had, blasting. But I felt bad for the other healers that didn't want to play that, and I wanted to play a Mistweaver. It feels bad to roll into a new expansion and have 2 of the 3 specs be dead. So yeah. I mean, I think what they did was right. Uncapping it feels better now. And all of the tuning that they've done on the knobs feels good. And then Spirit Shell also now feels like a button that's really worth pushing, because 15 seconds is a lot of time to stack the raid with shields. I'm not very good at Spirit Shell. I need to do a lot of timing in order to figure it out, and weak orders and shit, but it's a very powerful spell, and everybody's always said it is, but there's a lot of minutia there. So
now you actually have to use it. But whereas before
we get to use it.
Yeah, it's everything that Joardee said, I 100% agree with. I think it's very telling that Disc Priest mains by and large are this needed to happen, even though it was a very some of the nerfs were very severe, and they did revert the capping, which was the biggest part of the nerf, honestly. But the other stuff, the spec now actually feels like a healer spec and not like a godly DPS healer hybrid that just doesn't everything the best.
The hero class
it really was disgustingly overpowered before in a way that's hard to describe adequately.
Yeah.
And now I think if we went forward with the tuning we have right now, I think the Dispriest balance is fine personally. So.
All right. We'll keep going through the changes. I forgot to mention, by the way, along with the target cap, which, like we keep saying, they've now gotten rid of. So don't freak out, everyone. They did fuck with Divine Star and Halo, but then they decided not to do that. So it works as you remembered it. They also fucked with Cascade and lowered the bounces to 3 from 4, but then they once again changed that back, so don't worry. Cascade, Halo, and Divine Star all work as you remember them after a few days of mucking around with it. Look, guys, again, I know we just talked about a bit about Dispriest, but I'll just yell out some things that they tried to do. As we said, they're really getting in there with priests and trying to address this. Divine Aegis lowered to 80% of the heals value was 100%. That's the first one they did. Then they did it again with then they changed it again to the healing conversion increase by 12.5%, taking it to 90% was 80%. Anyway,
that's a huge thing. I just want to talk about because they nerfed it and then immediately retuned it up, which like it's so refreshing that they're just like, let's find the sweet spot, and it just makes me feel like whatever issues there are, they're going to fix it. And that is like, it's like there's trust. To go from Kata to now, it's like night and day. So
yeah, it's also nice that they have like clear design directionality to the changes, where like it seems to me clearly they want to make it so that smite isn't always the right button to press. And sometimes you want to press Prayer of Healing, sometimes you might want to like Binding Heal or something, and like adjusting Divine Aegis and leaving the Atonement where it is, it's just like, it just feels to me like they kind of know, they have some idea of like how the healers ought to be played, and they're directing the changes toward that, as opposed to just kind of twiddling dials and like seeing what happens.
On the Atonement note, sorry, also they mucked around with the tier 14 set bonus. The penance cooldown lowered to 1 second. It was 3. Now, the Atonement healing note, Zug, they lowered it to 70% from 90%, which you talked about very briefly. But, when we discussed healers about 2 months ago, you really stressed to me that, penance feels so good because it's so strong. It's crazy in MoP. Now they've nerfed it, like you say. Is it still in a stronger state now on the beta than it was in Kata? How does it feel Atonement-wise right now?
Well, in Kata, penance doesn't proc Atonement.
It's I mean just Atonement in general.
Yeah, so Atonement, like it's gonna feel more similar to Kata now, where like it's usually good and it's usually the correct choice to use as your filler, but some of the time you're gonna want to make decisions to press your spells defensively and cast heals, which I think is like the ideal design space for the spec. Whereas before, because of how Divine Aegis works and how like you double dipped on your mastery and your crits and how much smart healing it did and how much absorb it generated, you were very incentivized to just spam your Atonement abilities. And they do smart healing. It's not like the most fun thing, in my opinion, to have all your heals not have to be targeted. You're not like you're not making as many decisions, and that to me is less fun. So I think it's overall good that Atonement is less powerful, but it's definitely not less powerful enough that you won't feel really good pressing Penance or Holy Fire. Smite just might feel a little bit underwhelming. I don't know what Joardee thinks about that.
I think the emphasis has been more pushed towards proactive healing rather than reactive healing. Like, yeah, sure, you're gonna fill in with Holy Fire and Smite, but it is what I saw from the healing profile, how it changed for our Dispriest from, let's say, the second MSV test to the first Heart of Fear test, was his Atonement healing was like a lot lower than it was before, but because he's got a good understanding of all the fights, his Spirit Shell healing was absolutely bonkers. And I mean, 40% of his healing sometimes was Spirit Shell, where he knows ahead of time that there's a shitload of damage about to come in. He'll be spending the full 15 seconds before that damage comes in. He won't be smiting or doing anything. That all that Atonement healing that he would have done during that 15 seconds is gone. Instead, he's now got big old shields on everyone, waiting for the damage to come in.
Yeah, and even though Disc Priest got adjusted down very significantly in terms of their overall healing, that type of healing, like the profile of generating huge absorbs, is just really valuable, like qualitatively. So, but previously you had everything, right? You did really high overall HPS, really high damage, good CDs, and you had the option to do this really powerful pre-shielding. And now they've taken a little bit of the power out of some of the other aspects of the spec, but they've put it into that pre-shielding with the increased CD on, the increased duration on Spirit Shell. And that just makes the spec like actually have an identity instead of just being the best at everything.
All right, guys. Last one on, well, not last one, but we got heaps more on pre. So Scotty,
Sorry,
sorry,
can I interrupt for a second?
yeah,
My dog needs to
go for
outside.
it.
I'm gonna
Go,
just
no,
chew
you
my
go
neck.
for it.
Be
Go,
right back.
you go, mate. Look, Double, on the Divine Star note. Sorry, I'll just say, like Joardee mentioned before, Spirit Shells also had its duration raised by 50% for 15 seconds. Divine Star, despite the revert of the cap and everything, it still kept a nerf that they put in, which was a 25% nerf. So, Zug, talk to me about the impact that will have on talent choice. Is Divine Star now, with that 25% nerf, deemed silly to take, or is it now?
Is it dead now?
Yeah, is it dead?
Yeah, this is actually a really interesting one, and I actually really think it's good that they left the 25% nerf in, and it's for two reasons. One, because of how they changed all the like AoE healing effects in 5.4, they're all target capped at 6 now. So like Holy Radiance, Healing Rain, Holy Priest Sanctuary, stuff like that. It heals 6 targets in its smart heal. So that doesn't actually scale up. Like if you have more than 6 people stacked on top of each other, the ability is still doing the same raw healing. It just might overheal a little bit less. Whereas Divine Star and Halo, because of how they're uncapped, there's only a few things in MoP that are uncapped. It's like Chi Torpedo and the Priest 90 row talents, or I think, and like Resto Druid Bloom, I think has an aspect of it that's uncapped. So there's only a couple things. And Divine Star, as you get more and more players that it can hit, especially in 25 man, it just becomes like this just disgustingly broken button to press. And so taking a little bit of the power out of that for Disc Priest and keeping it for Holy Priest makes it gives Holy Priest a niche that it didn't have before, where Discipline Priest, you still will take Divine Star at 10, 11, 12 plus targets hit, and it's still good for Disc Priest, but it won't be as good as the Holy Priest Divine Star. And so now, if you have a fight where all the whole 25 man rate is stacked up on top of each other, Holy Priest is going to do significantly more raw HPS than every other healing spec in the game. And that makes Holy Priest have a niche now where it's actually better than Disc Priest in some sense. Same thing with Divine Hymn being uncapped, which is a change we'll get to later. I'm sure Holy Priest is going to take us a while because there's a lot of stuff there. But
yeah, we're getting to it.
So it's definitely not a dead talent. It's just not, you're just not always going to take it now, and it's not as overpowered for Disc Priest. Whereas for Holy Priest, not only did it not get the 25% buff, but now it got a buff with the chakra changes, which again we'll talk about later. So I think this is a really good change, and it doesn't by any means kill Divine Star for Discipline Priest.
Are you taking it if you were a Disc Priest, or are you taking Halo or Cascade?
It just means that fight by fight you're gonna change what you take more. Right. I think Halo is generically really good. I think Cascade is also decent. So it'll just depend on the fight. Like if damage is coming out more frequently than 40 seconds, you probably won't take Halo. You might take Cascade, you might take Divine Star, just based on the fight, which I think is good, right? You want to have talent options fight by fight.
Silly question, because I know everything's so situational, but just really, really quick. If you were a PvP priest healing in a battleground, which of those 3 talents would you be leaning on more than the others?
Probably Cascade, because I'm not sure if this is the interaction in Blizzard Classic, but Halo can cancel polymorph and stuff like that. So it can be a little awkward in PvP, I think. Unless I'm wrong, I haven't done BG testing on beta or anything, but I think you probably take Cascade. maybe Divine Star for like damage.
Yeah. Okay.
But even in PvP, I think there's options.
Remind me, which server are you on, Zug?
I'm on white main.
Right, that's right. Okay. All right, let's get into Holy. And like you said, sorry, Scotty, pour yourself a drink because I'm going to get...
I'm sat here just having a whiskey, mate. We're all good. Don't worry.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, sorry, don't worry, mate. We'll get you we'll bring you back in the mix real soon. Just the healers are fucking, just in heaven right now as Joardee and Zug will tee off on Holy Priest. I'm loving hearing these guys fucking go hard on this topic. So please, believe me, guys, you're killing it. Look, Zug, you mentioned the time is now. We won't save it for later. Holy Priest, holy shit. They are really going for gold with this class and just trying to lift them up massively. I'm just going to machine gun out all the changes they've done. And Zug, I want you to talk to me about what you think they're trying to do with it and what your favorite changes were. And then we'll hear from Joardee on it as well. So here we go, guys. I'll try and Ace Ventura this. Holy Word Serenity healing increased by 40%. Holy Word Sanctuary healing increased by 60%. Holy Word Sanctuary mana cost decreased by 33%. Now costs 2.5% of base mana, was 3.8%. Mastery Echo of Light will now deal healing every second instead of every 3 seconds. Developers notes, this was originally intended in MoP, but due to latency issues, it was changed to 3 seconds. We're going to try this out to see if it works with modern tech the way that it was meant to be. Divine Hymn now heals up to 50 targets regardless of raid size. Developers notes, this was including pets in its original targeting. Instead of just making pets get the short end of the stick here, we moved this to hitting all targets. It's a 3-minute cooldown and wasn't that appealing compared to other cooldowns that exist. We feel this is a good direction for Disciplined Priests, being great with mitigation cooldowns, and Holy Priests have throughput cooldowns that reward the priest for finding moments to get a full channel off in a fight, or in the case of Holy Word Sanctuary, placing it in an area that players will be standing in for at least 30 seconds. Divine Hymn healing increased by 35%. Chakra Sanctuaries increase to area effect healing increased to 35%, was 25%. Chakra Serenities increase to single target healing increased to 35%, was 25%. Chakras cooldown decreased to 10 seconds, was 30 seconds. Holy shitballs. Zug, where do we even start?
Yeah, it's a mouthful there. Well, to kind of tell the yarn, like the first changes, Holy really didn't get touched. And then
not anything.
They very clearly, like Holy Paladin and Holy Priest, they definitely knew that they needed changes. And I kind of thought they might just overlook them, but then they came back and made some big ones. So Holy Priest, I think the overall changes are pretty good. They're pushing it in a good direction, especially with the chakra cooldown reduction. I think that's really good for the play style. However, I do think in raid you're just going to be seeing an AoE chakra most of the time. I also think that, again, to go back to the Divine Star stuff, like Holy Priest has an interesting niche now, especially in 25-man, where it just does crazy uncapped AoE healing. Divine Hymn hitting every player in the raid is incredibly powerful, not only just from the healing, but because Divine Hymn applies a 10% healing increase to the whole raid. And that's actually very significant. If you have 4 other healers doing 150k HPS, that's like the amount of healing that generates is almost equivalent to another healing cooldown. So when you press Divine Hymn, like nobody's dying. It's a very powerful cooldown. And I think that the initial buff was very focused on Divine Hymn, right? They increased its healing by a gigantic amount and uncapped it. And while that's good, it was a good buff to the spec. I think overall, if you play a healing spec and all your healing is coming from one cooldown button that you don't like target, you just sit there channeling it, that's not the most fun thing in the world. And so the second round of changes, what they did is they nerfed Divine Hymn down a little bit, and they put that power into your filler spells by buffing the chakra. And so that indicates to me that they know that that's a problem, all your healing coming from one cooldown, and putting a little bit more of that back into your filler is a really good change. So I think Holy Priest is actually in a really good spot. I think on certain fights, it's going to look incredible, especially in 25-man. And I think it's a really good thing that it has a niche, and that the niche that it has is different from the niche Discipline has, such that I think in a lot of raids, you're going to be swapping between Discipline and Holy Priest, fight to fight. And that to me just makes the class of priest a lot more interesting from a healer POV. It spices things up, adds variety. And I also do think Holy Priest is good enough that you could take one just as a Holy Priest and you know, it would be just fine now, which I think is great. So overall, Holy Priest changes, definitely like 2 thumbs up from me. I think they're great.
My I mean, it's huge. My healing alt was going to be Arresto Shaman, but I mean, I was said to you a couple of weeks ago, Zug, you got me Holy Priest curious. Now I'm fucking like, move over Resto Shaman, hello Holy Priest. I'm very intrigued by these changes. Joardee, you back with us, mate?
I am. I just got back.
Very good, mate. I just read out the laundry list of changes that they're making to Holy Priest in an effort to get people more involved. Mate, piggyback off of what Double said, you know, how did you feel about this just fucking laundry list, like I say, of changes to Holy Priest? I think I've seen you gushing about this. What's going on?
You know, I have not been a holy enjoyer since TBC, and I don't think I played it a single time in Wrath. There were 2 fights in Kata. I did some holy. One was they were both in phase 1. Ascendant Council or whatever, the 4 elementals, and then holy was decent for Alec here also. But it's so awesome seeing them adjust the knobs for holy. It has an issue that it doesn't quite do anything the best, and pure HPS classes are always going to be less valuable than utility plus whatever else, because the way that we play the game, it's just like everything's so optimized that you don't need that HPS in order to do well. You'd rather spread that to somewhere else in order to like increase your damage or reduce damage taken and all that stuff. But we'll see what they do with holy. I think it's becoming a very cool spec now. The reduced cooldown on chakra is really cool, and it looks like it's going to be very, very fun. I haven't done a ton of it, but Sulong is a fight, and we're about to be playing a lot of holy, at least for one fight, in the phase. And I'm hoping that there are other fights where it's like, okay, yeah, holy probably does better than disc here. We should run that. And so I have to learn how to play it, because I honestly don't know how to play it that well. So I've been watching all of Doublezug stuff to see if I can figure it out.
Very good.
Well, I have a slight disagreement here, which is I do think they actually do one thing the best, and that's specifically healing rot damage when the rate is stacked. Just because they have access to D-Star, and their D-Star is buffed now 35%,
Sure,
plus Disc's
intensity.
D-Star is nerfed 25%, so it's a 55% spread right between Disc D-Star and Holy D-Star. So on fights, like there's not that many fights like this, especially in phase 1, but on a fight like, if you've played Kata, something like Ultraxion, where the rate's pixel stacked and there's a bunch of rot damage, Holy Priest does like significantly more healing than every other spec in that environment.
Sure.
So I think there's like 2 sides, right? Where if barrier isn't very good and the raw HPS is useful, you could easily justify swapping from disc to holy. So I think that's really cool, right? Playing a class where you have 2 viable specs and you can swap between them, maybe some people don't like that, but I think it's overall really cool to have that option.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, I mean, like
you go, Joardee.
the way that talents and glyphs work in MoP, it's already like a lot of rolling up to a fight and being like, okay, what are the optimal choices here? And then to add on top of that entire other healing spec, it just makes priests feel super, I don't know. There's a lot of options, and you can really optimize your play, which I think is really great. I love this talent system. I love this glyph system, and I know that a lot of people don't, but I think it actually has more variety than the old talent system, because the old talent system was just like there was like 3 points that you could float, and now there's like a whole spell that you have to decide if that's what you want to use, and other stuff.
Zug.
Yeah, I also think, just super quickly here, people are underestimating the H-Priest raw HPS a little bit, and also with the chakra change now, you can do decent damage if you're really on top of things and sweating and using your red chakra at the right time, so you won't be losing too much compared to Discipline Priest with damage, which I think is good. I like looking through logs and stuff, not a lot of people have been trying out Holy Priest. And I think when people do try it out a little bit more, especially on the fights where it's strong, they're going to be surprised how good it is.
I think it's good that it opens the door to just taking both. I know, obviously, I know you guys will be really excited because it's like, some fights will Holy, some fights will Disc, some fights will use Halo, some will use Divine Star, etc. But I think it's good that you could justify actually having one Disc and one Holy Priest, and then getting the best of both worlds, where you've got you've got barrier from the Disc Priest, you've got the damage from the Disc Priest, but now you've got a ridiculously strong just throughput cooldown that like Doublezug said earlier, obviously buffs all your other healers as well, because it increases everyone's healing by 10%, or healing received by 10%. So actually, not necessarily worrying about an individual priest and thinking in a 25-man that there is a world where you could run both. I think that's quite nice.
Oh, 100%. It's not even like that hard of an argument for me personally. Like if you're a normal, not top 0.01% guild, and you have somebody who loves Holy Priest and is comfortable on that spec, you can 100% take them, and at very low cost. Like you're not trolling at all by taking a Holy Priest just to play Holy Priest.
We'll change classes now, guys, but just three quick cleanup things on Priest. Zug, is Chakra OGCD in Mob?
Yeah, it's off the GCD. You can like macro it into abilities and stuff.
Perfect.
It's better than Kata.
I was going to say, because it was on GCD in Kata, right? Because it felt I was trying it out a couple of weeks ago, and it just felt super clunky. I'm pretty sure it was on the global cooldown.
Yeah, I think it is on G. I haven't played Holy in Kata in so long.
I'm pretty sure
I think it is on GCD.
Yeah, because there were times I was trying to swap chakras. There was times a couple of weeks ago, the limited time I was checking out Holy Priest, that I was trying to change chakras, and you get the chakra change off, but you're spamming the heal you want to cast under the new chakra, and sometimes it wouldn't go off, and I was just like, I thought I cast that in, what's going on? Anyway, it's great that it's OGCD and MoP, that'll fix everything. Zug, you said that something about, Holy's D-Star being buffed, but was that a specific change that went out that I'm not seeing? Or are you saying because Disciplines got nerfed, it makes Holy's by virtue better?
Yeah, it's two things. One, Discipline Priest got nerfed, so that's 25%. And then two, your Chakra effect, the one that buffs AoE spells, buffs all your 90 rows. So it buffs Divine Star, Halo, and Cascade.
Perfect.
So you get like an extra multiplier on top of that.
Yep.
And that Chakra got buffed by 10%.
Yep, I'm a dum-dum. I get you now.
Yeah, the full like value is like 55%, I think.
Yeah.
Which is a huge difference on something as powerful as Divine Star.
Okay. And just for you Shadow Priests out there, look, we knew that you were going to start generating Shadow Orbs passively. That's been in there for a little bit on the beta. We also knew that, we knew that Shadow Word Pain got buffed by 18% because Scotty mentioned that earlier. But also you got a 5% flat damage increase while in Shadow form. So good news for Shadow. Scotty, did Shadow really need that? I'm guessing yes, and probably if not more.
Yeah, it did. They're doing. I'm trying to think now. The 18% Shadow Word Pain damage. I don't think that was put in until after Heart of Fear had finished, or maybe the back end of it. I don't know, Joardee Doublezug, if you remember. I don't think I've actually seen a Shadow Priest. Yeah, I was going to say I don't think I've actually seen a Shadow Priest since with the 18% in raid. So yeah, time will tell next weekend.
All right, very good.
One thing I'll mention really quick is that they got kind of a stealth buff because AG got nerfed, which is the healing cooldown that DPS shamans can use. VE, which is the same thing but for Shadow Priest, didn't get nerfed. So that's a sort of a buff, like relatively speaking, right? If you can get a lot more off healing from a Shadow Priest than an Ellie Shaman or an Enhance, that raises their stocks a little bit. And the healing that Shadow Priest can do with Divine Star and Halo is pretty significant as well. So that gives them a little bit of extra value.
Shadow Priest Halo does significant healing. I always see a big purple circle, and I'm wondering if that's healing also.
Yeah, it's when they're in shadow form, their Halo gets all purpley.
All right, cool.
Guys, we'll move on. Sorry, I know that was a good 30 to 40 minutes on priest, but there was a lot to discuss there, and I want to make use of my healing experts while I've got them here.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. Joardee, I'll let you pick the next class. Is there a class you're dying to talk about that you got a bit to say about? One of the other healers or not?
Let's
Mistweaver?
diversify.
Sorry, monk, I mean?
Yeah, we could do monk in general if you want. Just go Mistweaver and then the other monk classes.
All right. Well, it's up to you because Scotty will obviously have a lot to say about monk, so that's good. You happy to talk about Mistweaver for a little bit as well?
Yeah, I think. Sorry if you hear the dog barking.
No, it's okay. We'll get there.
Mistweaver is. Oh yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Park Mistweaver for a few minutes. I want to get Scotty back involved on the other specs for a second. Scotty, mate, I hope you've drilled a couple of whiskies in that time. Thank you so much for your patience. Let's bring you back into the mix and discuss, easily your favorite class, the monk. Now, where are they? Let me find them here. Here. Oh, God, they've got a shitload of changes. I'm not going to read all these out. Guys, they got
I did the same thing in my video. I was like, I'm not going to do this.
Yeah. There's no fucking way. There's no fucking way I'm reading all of that. So, Scotty, I'll just get you to tee off globally about. Let's start with player's choice. Scotty, do you want to start with Brewmaster or Windwalker?
I mean, Windwalker. Brewmaster's not really got anything of any value worth talking about. I mean, it all really is Windwalker and Mistweaver, to be fair.
Tee off on Windwalker. How do you feel about everything they've done and what they're trying to do with it now?
They've pretty much done the change that it was the one change that I wanted that I think people have kind of misunderstood ever so slightly, but obviously Windwalker Monk went through lots of changes throughout, and I don't even just mean MoP, I mean Warlords of Draenor all the way up until when we eventually settled on hit combo, which is the mastery where you basically you don't want to replicate two of the same abilities in a row. So I'm kind of stuck in that bad habit still now, to be fair, because I play a lot of retail monk still. So I find myself playing a retail monk in MoP Classic, which kind of don't make too much of a difference. But the mastery started as hit combo, which not hit combo, sorry, combo breaker, where you get a free spender essentially, either a tiger palm or a blackout kick, and then in 5.2, we got a mastery where our Tiger's Eye brew, which is a 30, it stacks 20 times. Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that I don't mix all of this stuff up because I've literally been making a Windwalker guide today. You basically want to use 10 stacks, and before the changes that Blizzard put in, it would be a flat 60% damage buff. So you'd get to 10 charges, each stack was worth 6%. The mastery in 5.2, which is what they've gone back to, scales with your mastery. So as a base, so actual like the base amount is 5.1%. So on the face of it, it seems like it's technically sort of a 9% damage nerf, but it's not, because obviously you can now get each one of those stacks increased by the amount of mastery you've got. So you've got 1.6% from your base mastery, and it starts at 3.5. So yeah, it's 5.1. It's not a significant buff or nerf, really, to begin with. This is something that's just going to scale throughout the expansion and get significantly better. I personally, from the changes being implemented, my damage has gone up. Not, I wouldn't say significantly, but a little bit. And I've played around with heavy haste builds, heavy mastery builds, a little mix of both. Looking at the WoW Sims, which is by far, far away from perfect at the moment. But yeah, people shouldn't get too excited and be like, oh my God, like Windwalker's going to be topping damage on every fight. Like they've got the 5.2 mastery, because we just haven't got the levels of mastery where it's massively impactful. So like if I'm stacking full mastery at the moment, I can get up to about 80%. So in my damage burst windows where I'm using Tiger's Eye Brew, it's a 20% damage buff for that period of time. But then you're sacrificing lots of other secondary stats, mainly haste, to be able to get there. So it's kind of not changed all that much. I would say that there might be a few K DPS difference, but I'm talking single digit in the thousands. It's not massive, but it is brilliant for the future. You know, it's like when we're actually in Throne of Thunder and we start getting better gear, like this is something that's going to scale amazingly. And obviously, eventually, when we get our hands on Rune of Reorigination, it's just going to be insanely fun to be playing Windwalker. But yeah, that's it really. It's just they just changed the mastery. The rest of Windwalkers remain pretty much unchanged, as is Brewmaster.
Right. So you're happy?
I love it. Absolutely love it. Yeah.
Very good.
The mastery before was basically a chance when you gain Tiger's Eye Brew stacks. So you would get Tiger's Eye Brew for every 4 chi that you spent. So another part of the change with a 5.2 mastery is now every 3 chi that you spend. But before, when you generated a chi, a Tiger's Eye Brew, you had a chance equal to the amount of mastery you've got. So maybe your mastery was like 25% chance to generate an extra stack. So it made it very RNG. But there would be times where RNG went against you and you literally got 0 benefit from your mastery, if that makes sense. So it was just a shit mastery all round. Whereas now, as long as you've got low levels of mastery, where it still takes you above that 60%, you know, any higher than that 60% is a buff. You know, as I say, me being pretty heavy haste stacked, I'm still getting to like 71%-ish. So in those damage burst windows, I'm not losing any haste, and I'm still getting about an extra 11% damage during my actual burst windows. And obviously, it's a massive. It now would be a massive disadvantage to not have like Blessed of Might or a mastery buff from a Shaman or something like that, because that is literally 10% damage for a Windwalker now.
Okay.
Just to have that one buff in the raid.
All right. Now, mate,
do you think they could use like a little bit more pre-throne? In terms of buffs?
Say that again, sorry?
Do you think that Windwalker could use like a little bit extra buff pre Throne of Thunder, pre like rero? It's hard, right? Because like if they do get it, then you have to take it away once you get Rune, and then it feels bad, right?
Well, I can only really, again, I try to go based off like sort of first-hand experience and not worry too much about hearsay or what people are saying on Discord or whatever else, and I kind of feel like my damage is fine. I don't feel like I need any buffs. I'm not, but by no means top in the damage meter, but I'm also not at the bottom. There's fights that are really, really, you could just say they're made for Windwalker, like Shah of Fear, Garrelon. There's multiple fights where you can, if you can make good use of Storm, Earth, and Fire, you are top. Like, it's as simple as that. They're super strong situationally. But yeah, I kind of feel like Windwalker is around where I would expect it, and you probably expect me to selfishly say yes, I want more buffs, like make Windwalker stronger. But I kind of don't feel like it needs it.
That's you're getting your content creator license taken away from you, Scotty. You're too reasonable. No, you're not allowed to.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, give me more buffs.
Yeah, you have to consistently say buff my class.
Discord for that one.
Yeah,
I think on like AOE stacked fights, like Stone Guard or Windlord or even Amber Shaper with the slimes, like you're gonna see some crazy Windwalker numbers. And I think that that's okay that their single target may be a bit lower than the other classes. And I agree with Scotty. I don't think it needs anything else.
All right. It actually, Scotty, correct me if I'm wrong, seems like Brewmaster didn't get anything done to them, did they?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. All right. Now, Scotty, is there anything, I know you said like obviously you don't want more buffs, but are there any like changes you would make, in whether it be in terms of quality of life or anything for Windwalker right now, or you really are very, very happy?
I mean, one quality of life change, which this is just coming from me being, a bit of a retail player as well, is to be able to use Fist of Fury while moving. But like, that's a very selfish want.
Right.
As in it feels awful using something that costs 3 chi and being rooted in place, especially when it's not that great of an ability anyway. It does okay damage, don't get me wrong, but you're using it under very certain criteria, and you can guarantee the second you start using Fist of Fury, the tank's going to move. Like it's extremely infuriating. So like no, in all seriousness, I'm very happy with Windwalker, and if it stayed exactly the same as it is, I know it's going to scale very well. And again, like it's very competitive, like single target AOE. I'm not saying it again, not necessarily going to be top in damage, but you're up there if you're playing it well.
Again,
So it don't need anything, but I would take the ability to be able to cast Fist of Fury when moving, even if it was a glyph.
mate, you're doing it wrong. We'll teach you, okay? You've got to say, Blizzard, change this, or else I'm fucking quitting and taking all my viewers with me. We'll get you in the way of saying it, mate. It's all good.
Yeah, but what worries me is what they give it a massive buff in some way that, as I say, arguably it doesn't need.
Yeah.
And then they take away something else that did work. I'd kind of, when I feel like just the mastery was enough to get it to scale nicely throughout the expansion. I'm not greedy, mate. I'm not greedy.
No, good man, good man. All right, Joardee. We won't go anywhere near as long as we did on Priest. Let's relatively quickly rip through Mistweaver, but I don't want to do it dirty as well. We're not going to be here for 2 minutes. Joardee, talk to me about, like I said, I'm not even fucking reading all the specifics of what Mistweaver had done to them, but it was a fair bit. Talk to me globally about your feelings towards what they're trying to do and what they've done with Mistweaver, and then we'll get Zug weighing in as well.
Yeah, I think Mistweaver more than any class, or not any spec, but any class, was the most fundamentally broken, because a huge part of what makes Mistweaver, at least from a class fantasy standpoint, awesome is the fist weaving option, and that wasn't really possible with the way that it was designed going into classic now, but they fixed it, and you can fist weave effectively now. The amount of DPS and healing that they are doing as of the last raid test is awesome. They don't have as much utility as the other healers. They have high HPS, high damage, low utility, or maybe medium, but like it's really, really cool to see it working. The range healing playstyle still works, and Doublezug is going to have a lot more specifics here, but I think that it's looking really, really fun, good, and not easy to play, which I think is the best possible thing you could ask for from a healer. Yeah.
All right. Zug, go for it.
Yeah, so to go off what Joardee was saying before, the spec was like very broken in 5.4 state. You basically, like, the best playstyle would have literally been to spend most of your time just channeling the like stupid lightning spell, Crackling Jade Lightning, which is like a 8-second channel, and you could just AFK channeling that for like 80% of the fight. That would be the correct playstyle, which is just like really bad and not fun, in my opinion. And they definitely fixed that. They've effectively made fist weaving, which is like your melee filler, and then weaving in your hots and your uplifts, which is, I think, the most fun and the most flavorful like monk playstyle. They've made that the best, but the other playstyles aren't that far behind. You can still use Crackling Jade Lightning if you want. You can still play like a caster-centric style and Soothing Mists, and you're not going to do damage, but your healing is going to be a little bit better. And I think just generally they've succeeded tremendously with all the changes they did to Mistweaver, and I think it's in a great spot now. Like Joardee said, high healing, high damage, but a little bit lower in CDs and utility. But I'm actually really interested to see what Scotty has to say. He's probably the one that's played the most MoP Mistweaver out of all three of us, so interesting to see.
Very good, Scotty.
I think it feels great. Yeah. Again, I'll be honest with you. I know there was a lot of complaints about mana and not being able to fist weave, but I didn't have any issues even before it got fixed.
Oh, whoa. Let me jump in. Let me jump in, Scotty, because I saw your little tips and tricks on your videos saying, now, guys, you don't have to do this, but I do this, where you swap stances for the free jib. Yeah, exactly, the free jab.
You could stance, and you would still proc muscle memory, so you could swap to energy stance and get like 48,000 mana and a few globals, and that's what made it like viable, but you couldn't do that on like the Blizzard beta. So
yeah.
In MSV you could still stance. So I was still
Yeah, but
keeping
only
100%
for Rushing Jade
uptime on
Wind.
Rushing Jade Wind. Yeah, exactly.
You
So,
couldn't do the other stuff, so it was a lot. It was still like okay, but it was nowhere close to this Dance Dancing on the private servers.
But
no, it was nothing compared to
No.
that. But in all seriousness, I've always preferred Chi Torpedo to Russian Jade Wind anyway. But yeah,
It's,
again, I'm just talking to someone who's it did not feel as good as on private servers. Don't get me wrong, and yes, it did have more mana issues, but like this is all positive. Like it's all positive changes, and I think it's in a great spot. But there's a couple of things that you may or may not have seen around Chi Torpedo. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that don't get fixed.
Oh, is it?
The
performing
Cheeto
very
cheese
well?
is kind of silly.
I
And
love it.
that talent,
Really,
I agree
really
with you
hope
that
it don't change.
talent is underrated. It's one of the very few things, like I was saying before, that doesn't get capped. And so if you can hit like 10 plus targets with Chi Torpedo, it's incredible. And you can store 3 charges of it and just blast. It's a really cool talent.
In the first
certain
phase,
fights.
like Spirit Kings, it's amazing. Elagon last phase, it's really strong. There's there's a lot of places where I much prefer Chi Torpedo, and it's free at the end of the day. However many targets you hit, it's all free healing, which that's why I like Chi Torpedo paired with Celerity. But yeah, it does feel a hell of a lot better. I've done a full Hoth and Terrace as Mistweaver, and yeah, it felt strong. There's some fights where we've not got onto it yet, so I'm really like trying to be careful what I say because I don't want to ruin one of the classes we're about to get to. But on certain fights situationally, Mistweaver, its healing output is absolutely incredible because it's just one of the few healers that has practically no positional requirements if you're not running Chi Torpedo. You know, being able to have an entire raid all scattered all over the room and like on a Garrelon fight, for example, where you've got people running around, kiting pheromones. You've got 2 tanks that are stood in front of the boss. You've got maybe a couple of melee at the back of the boss on one of the legs. And then you got all the range stood in the middle of the room. Everyone's all over the place, but your healing don't really suffer too much because of that, just because of how Mistweaver works. But it's always going to be one of my favorite healers, and I mean I'll be healing all content throughout MoP as a Mistweaver main. Well, one of my mains.
Very good.
And the damage is incredible. The damage is incredible, and it's free because now that jab mana cost is reduced and your mana tea's better, your jab and Tiger Palm spam is like basically free. So your damage is incredible and it costs no mana, so you have a lot of mana to play around with, which some of the other specs don't have a lot of mana to play around with. So the spec is going to feel incredible. It's going to do really good damage, and then when you need the healing, it can do really good healing.
Well, that's the one,
Zug.
That's the one I was just going to mention that, like, from the fuckwit layman's perspective, which is my own, testing on the beta, jab really felt like shit as a Mistweaver. Like, I just thought it was prohibitively expensive. I was just like, this feels like shit. Like, I don't want to press that button. Look how much fucking mana it takes off me. But, like, as you say, they've nerfed the mana cost from 8% of base mana down to 6% base mana, so a 25% cut. I mean, I'm obviously not a developer. Zug, yell at me for suggesting this. I'm very, very happy for that change. If anything, I was like, fuck, I'm surprised they didn't make it 50% off jab, but would that have been way too much?
That would have been too much, in my opinion. The spot it's in now, like, when I say that your filler is free, I mean it's literally free. In phase 1 levels of crit, your jab plus Tiger Palm actually generates mana because of after 5 you get a free flash heal, and that flash heal generates a chi. And so if you include all that in, it literally will cost 0 or negative mana, which is just like incredible. So if they went any lower, it would be, I think it would be bad design, honestly. But where they are at now is that your jab is really good for like a filler spell, but you also have the option to sometimes like jab uplift or use your jab to generate chi. It's going to be pretty mana inefficient, but that choice is there. Whereas before, if you ever pressed your jab without a muscle memory, it was just terrible and felt awful.
Yeah, you had to
crippled your
consume
mana. So I think it's in a good spot, and I don't think it needs any more buffs, honestly. More buffs would be kind of crazy.
That's the thing. It just feels now that, if we go back to the first round of testing, I say I got through the raid fine and, wasn't having issues, but that I wasn't able to fist weave 100% of the time. That was the thing, like in the first round of testing, where it was more of a decision that you either went in and fist weaved, like if you had the mana to be able to do so, or you was more focused on just actual healing, actual throughput. Now your filler is a bit more disc priest-esque, where your filler as a disc priest, if there's not a lot going on, is to do damage. Now, like that is always the default because you're not being punished by actually going up and fist weaving. It's not a consideration that you need to make anymore. It's just, you fist weave when you're not needing to blanket the raiding hots or, start getting that ramp up ready. Like if you know there's a crush about to come in on Garrelon, you're wanting to make sure that you've got maximum amount of renewing mist out and, your Thunder Focus T to get additional renewing mist out. And then you sat waiting to obviously start uplifting. Whereas before you was having to focus on that, and then you're looking at your mana afterwards, and you're like, Christ, I can't really get in and start using Rushing Jade Wind, or I can't get in and start jabbing to get extra chi to be able to do extra uplifts. It's in a much better place.
So-
I could have just said it's in a
Yeah.
much better place and not said anything.
One,
Oh, I loved
one
it.
last thing I'll say here is that if you're looking for like a chill healer to play, definitely Mistweaver is not that. It's going to be high APM. Your uptime is going to matter a lot. Your CPM is going to matter a lot. And there's a lot of little fiddly things to like, your REMs have to be used on cooldown. TFT is kind of fiddly to use. So if you want something that's a little bit more chill and relaxed to play, I'd recommend, Shaman or something else like that over Mistweaver. But if you like that, like super engaged melee playstyle, it's going to be the most fun healer by far.
Yeah. Last thing I'll say on this to wrap up on Monk is just, as Joardee, I was laughing, I think with you and Zug a few weeks ago and Scotty, and I posed the odd question of like, if you don't fist weave, are you going to get laughed out of the instance? And I think the answer definitely now is yes.
No. I did.
No?
Did we say it was back in the day? I don't think that you would get laughed out, but I think that you're missing an opportunity that the class now has very good tools to support. And I've never played it. Literally never played a Mistweaver. My first time playing it would be leveling it in pre-patch on like a 12-hour session, and I'm going to be learning as I go, and I'm going to be asking chat, how the fuck do I play this class? And I'm really excited to do that. And you can bet I'm going to be up in melee the whole time learning fist weaving first because I
Right.
don't want to get used to bad habits of standing back and just
Well, Zug, I mean, I'll just throw it to you and say, like, it really seems like they're going, Mistweavers, you're a fucking melee class. Get out of the back row and get in there.
Yeah, it's by far the best playstyle from like a competitive standpoint, but I do think like if you want to play ranged, and you can press CJL and do decent damage and pretty good healing, like your HPS is similar or even sometimes higher, and Soothing Mist is still a really efficient spell. So if you're really if you really are dedicated to playing Monk and not playing melee, it's not like that bad. You're not hard trolling. You really just lose damage, which isn't always the most important thing in the world.
Like go play.
Yeah, you could just play something else.
Yeah.
Paladin or something.
All right. Joardee,
It basically just would feel like a Resto Druid or something if you chose to play that way.
fair enough. Joardee, we're going to go on a bit of a tangent and an intermission here between all this class talk. We've taken some really heavy classes down, but mate, before we lose you, I know you've got to go really soon. I want to talk about one of the more generic things that changed as well over the last couple of weeks. And I know all of you guys are going to fucking blow your loads over this one. Let's talk about something that we discussed on the show, which is will they or won't they mess with how you deal with or acquire or trade your bonus rolls, that you get through the items through Pandaria and whatnot. They absolutely did do something with that and made it incredibly alt-friendly, it seems like. Joardee, what was your reception of their change? What's the item called again? I always forget the fucking name of it.
Lesser Charm of Good Fortune.
That's the one.
Yeah, I think that the change is good. I wish that there was a solution that made the things account bound, but I don't think they can make currency account bound or something. There's some fudginess there. But like it's a half measure, and a half measure is better than nothing. And it also encourages you to play specific content, which I think you will end up wanting to play anyways because it's for people that don't know, the Celestial Dungeons, which are like the new Heroic Plus, they are going to give a bag, or you can buy a bag with it that you can then send to an alt, and inside of those bags, and there's like some Russian nesting doll situation with the bags, but whatever, you can get guaranteed lesser charms of good fortune, and those bags are sendable to alts. So so it's something. It's good. It's nice that you don't have to necessarily play every character every week, but can still progress on them as you go in 5-man or non-raid content. And making it alt friendly is always a good thing, because the way that gamers play these days, we all have alts and stuff. So I think it's great. I'm really excited. I think the Celestial stuff is really good, and I'm excited.
Scotty, I'll throw it to you. You know, a few weeks ago in your videos was saying, it's a good feeling, isn't it? Because I've been in this situation before as well a couple of times, where you fixate on something in your content and you just say, look, I really, really hope this gets addressed. This is a clunky thing, and I pray that something gets done. And then, fucking a few days later, you literally see the change that you asked for come out. And you're like, oh my God, like, did they actually hear something I had to say, or was this coming anyway? Either way, I don't give a fuck. It's been done. That feels amazing. Scotty, I would venture to say you probably did have a pretty good hand in highlighting this issue for Blizz. I don't necessarily think it's overly serendipitous that the change came out just a few days after you really highlighted it in your video. Piggybacking off of what Joardee said, you must be, I would think you're ecstatic about this, right?
You would think that. But I like it. I don't love it.
Oh.
That's the honest truth.
Oh.
Okay, I like the fact that, yes, they've made it so, let's talk purely from a selfish standpoint, like me. I like it that I'm going to be able to do Celestial Dungeons on my main and get bonus rolls for my alt.
Yeah.
But that doesn't change the fact that those Celestial Dungeons are going to get incredibly boring after like 2 weeks. And then we're almost having to still constantly run the same dungeons over and over again.
To be fair, though,
to get...
pick your poison. Running dungeons over and over again, or running dailies over and over again.
Well, yeah, no, this is why with what Joardee said, where it's like a half measure, but it's fine. That's kind of where I'm at. I'll take it because it's better than nothing. But my way, which I know is very sad, and you're all welcome to take the piss out of me, but my way to get bonus rolls is doing pet battles, because I can literally just walk around getting pets that I haven't got. I can more or less switch my brain off while I'm just watching Netflix, and I get lesser charms, for actually winning pet battles. So
if I
could
turn your hat backwards and pull the Pokeball out.
Exactly. So it's kind of not going to change a great deal for me, because I would just go on my ult and pet battle to get the bonus rolls. I don't know. It's good. It's a positive change. I don't want to play it down, because it is very positive. And the fact that when we are going to be like in the zone, just smashing loads and loads of Celestials, to get the gear anyway. I'm kind of hoping that we're going to be rolling around in these fragments. After a few weeks of the Celestial Dungeons being fully out. As in all the gear on the vendor, and it 6 to 8 weeks after launch. So it's kind of not gonna be a worry. You do a few Celestials and then boom, you can just send bonus rolls over to your ult. But I am with Joardee, where it would have been nice for the lesser charms themselves to be account, but even if not account bound, trade the lesser charms in to a vendor to be able to then send a bag of them over to an alt. If that makes sense, rather than it being, I'm actually having to go and get a completely different currency to lesser charms to trade in for lesser charms.
Right. To be fair, though,
all this is just contingent on how fun the Celestial Dungeons are. So I just think it's super important that they focus on making them fun and repeatable. Like my full fantasy, never gonna happen fantasy is that they add like some kind of M+ type scaling. I think that would be really good for Classic, to have some kind of 5-man content that's repeatable and also like somewhat difficult. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. But if they did do that, that'd be really cool. But I agree that like it's a really good thing. But like how much more fun is going to be doing a celestial dungeon 10 weeks after raid launch than doing some dailies. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
what I mean. I don't want to come across super negative about it because I do honestly think it's a positive change. Like I'm fully behind it. I think it's great to see him do it. It's just yeah, I don't know. There's just something niggling at the back of my head. You know, like now, if I needed to go and do a Twilight dungeon on any character, I think I'd rather not log on. You know, it's like
Oh,
that's what they're going to get to. They're going to get to that point where we've just done so many of them that we're now almost not being forced to do more of them, but it's going to be quicker to do more of them. It's going to be more efficient to do more Celestials on your main that is absolutely stacked out in heroic raiding gear, just to be able to get your ults to bonus rolls. It's a bit of a strange one.
I'll go into a bat just a little bit for it and just say, I don't know, I'm a little bit. I thought I'd hear some different answers, but I'll provide the voice that the answer I thought I was going to get. Not that you have to give me an answer. I'm more like, oh, okay, I'm surprised you feel that way. Shout me down if you feel I'm wrong, guys. But I don't know, making dungeons persistently relevant throughout an expansion's life cycle is an incredibly good thing for a game, in my opinion. Now, I know I'm talking to a bunch of sweaty raiders who, if you weren't content creators, may more or less be raid loggers. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like a lot of my mates are raid loggers. There's nothing wrong with that. Fine. You play the game how you want to play it. But they basically just want to get on for 2 hours a week, do their raid, make it incredibly easy to do everything that they need to do well within that 2 hours that they play a week and then log off. Cool. Okay, whatever. But it's an interesting argument about compulsion to play or what the devs do to, quote unquote, make you log in. And I know that the game has gotten a lot of grief over like dailies, for example, daily quests. Oh my God, what is the devs' obsession with giving us, mandatory tasks to do every day or every week or what have you? And I agree. There's, sometimes it's just not very fun to have to feel compelled to log in and do monotonous things that you're not really that invested in, but you feel like you have to do because the reward is quite generous. I balk at throwing dungeons in that argument though, because I just feel like creating a currency that rewards consistent dungeon play through the game, it gets you logging on and playing the game. And I know people would say, well, Josh, what's the difference? You're forcing me to do something I don't want to do. There's literally no difference between daily quests and these dungeons because I don't want to do that shit, but now I kind of have to. Yes, I know it's optional, but it's semi-not because I'm a hardcore player. I need this currency. I've got to do it, and I don't want to do it. And Scotty, like you said, there's a loophole in terms of pet battles. At least I can do pet battles and turn my brain off. Like, why won't they let me just do stuff that I don't really have to be that engaged with? That's cool. But with the way the MMO works, I feel like you've got obviously new players being injected into the game all the time that need people to run these dungeons with them. You also need not necessarily new players, but players that are gearing up that need people, again, running with them. And it's always nice if it's someone who's like, hey, this guy's quite geared. He's a raider and we're smashing this dungeon because he needs something out of this place too. He's not just here for no reason. I just draw a lot of positives out of really pushing people towards the dungeon system to get them playing more than the 2 hours a week that they would if they were just raid logging. And if, I don't know, I feel a bit funny in a way in terms of, not that you guys were doing this, but if players complain that like, oh God, now I'm playing 5 hours, now I'm playing 4 hours a week or whatever instead of 2. Like, I can't believe they're making me do these 6 or 7 dungeons that I've got to do a week for this currency. It's like, if you're bitching about playing the game, then why are you playing the game? And again, you guys didn't say this, I'm just saying in general, like, I get that there's some elements of the content like a daily quest that, yes, do absolutely draw that monotonous tag. But like dungeons being like the eye roll and like, oh, I can't believe I've got to do a dungeon. Like that's literally what the game is. It's like complaining about being forced to fucking, I don't know, I'm trying to think of another gaming example. Being forced to fucking play a game of FIFA when you turn on FIFA. Oh, I've got to play a soccer game? Oh.
Totally agree. Totally.
Yeah. I mean, we sound tepid, but like it's 100 times better than dailies. Like there's no comparison at all. And also one thing I'll say is like your point is really good that it's healthy for the community to have everyone participating in dungeons all the time. What I would say is that a better way to do that is to make it so incentivized to have alts that enfranchised players are always leveling new characters and gearing them up through Celestial Dungeons. That's better in my view than forcing you to go back on your main. Although doing both of them is fine, right? Making you log in to do a dungeon once a week or whatever is like, it's not that big of a deal. And
both.
It's good for the community, right? It keeps players in the dungeon pool, which is good. It's like doing your community service, right? You go in there, it's whereas dailies, like, there's no actual positive effect on the game world at all with you doing dailies. It's just wasted time. Whereas the dungeons, they're more fun, and also it does help like there be more players in the dungeon pool, which is good. What I would say is I just hope they do as much as they possibly can to make those dungeons fun.
Yeah, I agree. And sorry, go Scotty.
Go on. I was just going to say, I don't want you to think that I'm being negative about it. Like I said, I think it's a really good thing.
No. You're a fucking piece of shit. You're a piece of shit, and you know it.
I just found it strange. That's more, it's good and it's nice because it don't matter how you look at it, it does. It gives you more options. So let's say I was doing pet battles and I got maybe half the charms I needed. I got 25, and then I was like, I'm fucking bored of this. I'm just going to jump on my main and go and smash a couple of Celestials. Like, it's good that it gives options. It is just kind of, it would have just been nice if they found a way to make them flat out account wide.
Yeah, I think at this point,
fair enough.
They've earned enough goodwill from me that this is fine and I'm okay. It's not a big deal. They're doing great in other areas. Like, if it's not perfect, whatever. And then incentivizes you to play the game, which I'm liking. So
the one thing I was surprised about, but 2.5 seconds later realized why they probably did it. In SOD, you ran dungeons and you could also get crafting items as a reward. This is not in the MoP bag. You do not get crafting reagents or anything like that, right? And
we don't know yet.
It hasn't been announced as of yet. Like, there's been nothing said. So
I hope that they add a ton of stuff to those bags.
Well, this is what I want to talk about, Joardee, because a part of me is like, make it like SOD. Wouldn't that be fun? And then maybe people like if you did feel a bit like Scotty and sort of go like, I don't really want to do this dungeon. Maybe I'll just do a pet battle for these bonus rolls. Maybe if they put crafting items in there, it's a bigger incentive where people go, now dungeons are well worth it. Fuck yeah, sign me up. Let's go. But, Joardee, the only thing I thought of as to why we haven't heard anything about this is maybe they really are going, no. We fucking need people out in the open world. We need people out there seeing each other, farming their shit. We need to make the world alive. We don't want to make the same mistake that, have been made in the past. Let's keep the world a thing. Do you think that's a reason or not?
I don't know if they've thought that far, I guess. And it's also one of those things that they can change very easily. So, I don't know. I think this is like a good thing for the game because it's just like you just change the loot table of the bag, and if the economy needs some love, you just use it.
Well, that's the thing. I guess if you do a few dungeons and you get fucking, I don't know, one stack of your leather, you're not going to be like cha-ching. You're still going to have to go out there and skin more leather. You know what I mean?
Totally. I do have to go. I apologize.
No, not at all, mate.
I've done this twice out of the 3 times now, and I'm so sorry.
No, you're a fucking legend for giving us the time you did, mate. Thank you so much. We'll look for all of these 13 videos coming from you very soon. Everyone check out Jordee's channel.
Thank you so much for having me, and Scotty and Doublezug. Love you guys. Thank you.
Cheers, Joardee.
See you guys soon. Good luck next weekend with your raid tests.
All right, we'll see you around the Countdown Discord. New Countdown Discord regular, Joardee. Thanks, mate. We'll see you later.
Yeah, later, guys.
Thanks, mate.
All right, now we can talk all the shit about him, boys. He's gone. No, he did very well. Look, on that note, Scotty, any thoughts on that one? Why, the pros or cons of why they've sort of said, you know what, we're stopping short of throwing crafting shit in these dungeon bags.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's going to be something that evolves over time. It's probably keep it fairly bare bones to begin with, and then they might start seeing some pain points where it makes sense to put things in. Whether it's I don't know some materials that you would ordinarily be able to get over at your farm. Maybe so there's like an additional way to get those, or like I don't know. I think early on it's kind of like I think they just need to see how it plays out. If there's it's abundantly clear that there's a shortage of stuff, or it's ridiculously difficult to get, or flasks are becoming a nightmare to keep up with. I'm just giving some examples. Then they can chuck some other things in. But at the moment, I've not really got any thoughts around it, to be honest.
All right, fair enough. We'll go back to the classes, boys. But Zug, I'm with you. Like, if with these Celestials, I'll just say, like, I'm really happy they're doing it. Like I said, I thought Twilight Dungeons were fantastic. If this is an improvement, that's great. If there was Celestials and Celestial Plus, you know what I mean? Like, I'd fucking lose my mind and be very happy, but I'm not expecting it, but we'll see. Look,
they can't do worse than Inferno Dungeons. It's all up from here. So
exactly. Look, guys, we won't keep you around too long. We'll sort of not rip through, but just address these other classes that we haven't talked about so that all the other players don't go, you fucking cunts just talked about Priest for 45 minutes and left me high and dry. Look, but there's some classes that there's not much to say about, that hasn't had much done to them. And, things like Mage and Hunter, I think. Like, can I just get the quick spiel from you guys? Because I didn't know about the Hunter raid buff that controversially was taken away and then re-added. It's not a talking point because if you didn't know or you haven't been following the news, nothing's changed for you as a hunter in terms of this raid buff. But for a second there, they took away the spore bats energizing spores and people lost their fucking minds. Scotty, can I get you to quickly tell us about your reaction and why people lost their minds in the way they did?
Well, I from my perspective, I thought it was absolutely ridiculous because what they tried to do was, say that, this will help, this will help by, we won't have to class stack because, we now feel forced to take an Ellie Shaman or forced to take a Boomy or a Shadow Priest because they're the only sources that you get the 5% spell haste from. It's from what, up until this point, up until when they made this change, classes that were fairly underperforming. Their damage weren't as high as a hunter. So, like I said earlier, why would I take a balanced druid for the 5% haste buff when I can take a hunter that's going to do maybe 30k more DPS and bring the buff that we need? So, it was quite mad that their fix to this was, oh, well, unlucky. Now you need to take one because, you're not going to get the 5% haste buff anyway, which the biggest kick in the bollocks that was towards the people that do 10-man. In a 25-man, yeah, no problem. Most 25-mans have probably got an elemental shaman already anyway. Because Ellie shamans perform particularly well. I think after the changes, Shadow Priests are going to be performing all right as well now. It really, to me, Balanced Druid is the outlier from, again, just from first-hand experience. I'm sure there's some really good Balanced Druids out there that are blasting, but, for a 10-man to basically be told you have to take one of these where you could actually have had someone that's doing far more damage and still brought the same buff, it was shit. Again, absolutely next to no impact on a 25-man raid, but 10-man, it would have really hurt. So I was glad to see it reverted, but that was all they was trying to do. They was like, right, everyone's stacking hunters. How do we do this without nerfing the hunter? Which eventually they just nerfed the hunter instead, which which kind of made sense.
Exactly, which is
it also harms your flex healing, where like if you have your Ellie as your flex or something and they swap, now you're missing the haste. Now you have to reforge all your haste breakpoints and stuff. It's just like really feel bad change, and I don't think it's going to affect class stacking at all anyways. So
okay,
well, agree 100%.
As Scotty said, explosive shot was the one thing that they eventually addressed in order to sort of talk about this hunter issue. Explosive shot got a 7% nerf. And they've just said, look, survival hunters saw multiple buffs to explosive shot in 5.4. We're just testing a revert here. We just want to bring the survival hunter damage down a little bit, but you'll get it back when Stampede correctly spawns on the target instead of next to the hunter, which was something that was, I think, playing up in the beta. Look, Scotty, I mean, it sounds like it's sort of a... Is it a huge nerf, this explosive shot damage thing? Because, like, I mean, as you say, everyone's been pumping on their hunter, everyone's leveling their hunter, they're all class stacking. Have you noticed anything with hunters after this change or not? Has this been tested?
No, it's not been tested yet. Yeah, no, this definitely happened
tested,
after the raids had closed. Time will tell. I'll be honest with you. So the concerns that I've heard from any class that's affected negatively, which to be fair, on the most part is mainly sort of survival hunter, disc priest, any where the tuning's been the opposite way to where people would like is, and I think it's a well-founded concern as well, to be fair, is the fact that right now Blizzard are clearly like all hands on balls deep into Mists of Pandaria.
Yeah,
and
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, you probably do, because we saw it in Cataclysm. They had all their focus on Season of Discovery, and Cataclysm was kind of just like, go on, there you go, the game's there, just like go and play it. So when they start working on whatever it is they're working on, Classic Plus or the next seasonal server or whatever, and they start to have their attention pulled away, what happens then? So I think all of this is great, and the nerf to hunter, as much as every hunter that hears this is going to hate me, it's great. If it starts to bring classes more in line and means we don't have to just stack one class because it is, just significantly better by such a margin that it's worth taking like as many of them as you can physically get in your raid. It's great that it's being brought into line, but it's not great if by the time we get back to, Siege of Orgrimmar, where this actually needs to be undone and they're going to need the damage, and now Blizzard are all of a sudden hands off again because they're focusing on the next project. That's kind of what worries a lot of people. It don't worry me, because I do honestly think that they've set the standard. This is what they're going to do, and they're going to see this through until the end. I've got faith that they are going to actually make sure that they keep on top of these class changes, even if it's only for the, first 2 to 4 resets of the raids each phase. So it's not like a long term, every week we're getting class balance in. But, I think they will. But I also do understand the other people who have been, their class has been negatively affected, and they're like, well, what if this is it?
Very, very good point, and I think that's a very fair concern from the development, timeline aspect. They've got to stay on the ball with this one, or they've got to plan ahead thoroughly enough that they know exactly what they're doing, and most of the work's been done while they've got, the time to do it. So, and just release when it needs to be released, but, adjust it as needed. So, yeah, we shall see. We'll move on to the Warlock guys and just say, because this is along the same lines of what Scotty was just talking about. Blizzard has, at the top of their post, they've said, look, guys, listen to us. We know it seems odd that classes that are perceived as very powerful in MoP are getting buffs. But please believe us when we say that they need them early on, and then we'll take them away later down the track as the scaling kicks in. Now, this is something that, gamers historically do have a tendency to go, oh, yeah, totally fine, all good, let's do it, boss. And they readily accept their buffs in the moment, knowing that the deal with the devil is that the buffs come now, but the nerfs come later. And then the nerfs will come in fucking 9 months and they'll hit the roof going, what do you fucking mean you're nerfing me? This was not part of the deal. What's going on? This is ridiculous. I can't wait for that moment to come. But for now, they're just sort of settling everyone down and going, guys, yes, Warlocks are really good, but probably not as good at the start as you guys seem to think they are. So we are giving them a little bit of a boost. So Affliction, Corruption buffed by 33%. Agony buffed by 18%. Haunt, increases dot effects by 40% rather than 35%. Demonology, Doom buffed by 33%. What else have we got here? Heaps of shit. I won't read it all out, but just buffs across the board for Affliction, Demonology. No Destro buffs, which is interesting, but probably understandable. Scotty, what's your thought on, the Warlock's a really interesting case study in people really do memory hold this one as a god in MoP, but still the buffs of Karma and Blizzard have said just, the beginning needs it. Like, do you agree?
Yeah, to a certain extent. So again, this all comes down to okay. I should probably say first of all, no, I don't really agree. I mean, destruction. I still, and again, this is like a finger in the air type thing. Not going to know until we go and test the raid again next week. But I still think destruction's probably going to be the go-to spec. Just I still think it's going to be doing more damage than Affliction, even like this. On specific fights, when you've got nice multi-dot fights, even before any of these buffs, Affliction was still better. Affliction has its place where it can multi-dot, but at the same time, I don't care as long as my faith in Blizzard isn't misplaced. So, they can do this, sure. They buff corruption by 33%, buff agony by 18%, buff haunts damage. None of it matters, because ultimately after the next raid test, if Affliction all of a sudden has overtook destruction by 20, 30k DPS, they're just going to scale some of that back a bit, aren't they? So I'm not too concerned about any of it at the moment. If this was the day before the raids were about to open on live, then I would probably have bigger issues with it. But while it's still early days and they've got time to make adjustments, and there's at least one other raid test, which I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get another weekend during pre-patch, because that happened back in Qatar as well. We had a really late raid test. So
Right.
Even though this is meant to be the last one, but who knows? They could put another one in. But yeah, I'm not too concerned. If it brings Affliction online and people understand that, once Affliction starts to scale in certain, it's not even certain raid tiers, certain encounters, to be honest with you, is the biggest deal. Because again, the Affliction's very along the same lines as what I was saying with Windwalker, where Windwalker is it's fine. It doesn't top damage on every single fight, unless you're just outgearing everybody else in your raid and you're very, very, very good. But in general, Windwalker will shine on those fights where you can use Storm, Earth, and Fire. So you can split yourself and cleave multiple targets. And then Affliction really is along the same lines. It's Destruction is more than likely going to be better on single target, but on those cleave fights where you can keep your dots rolling on and getting snapshotted dots, on multiple targets, then it's going to be better. The worrying thing is when you're buffing it to this extent early on, is it will now look incredibly overpowered on some of those sort of heavy, long cleave fights. But as long as Blizzard are on the ball, and we're all hoping they are, and if it is ridiculously broken on certain fights in the next in the next raid test, they just scale it back a bit.
Man, let me make a random comment about this as my cat shoves its ass in my face. It's a funny thing where Agren gets a lot of shit about the Paladin thing, and with Season of Discovery, Scotty, I'm not sure if you've seen over the last 18 months, Paladins were pretty powerful in SOD, and the prevailing meme was Agren plays other classes, but he does, he's a Paladin enjoyer. And the prevailing meme was oh, here we go again. Agren just fucking buffing the class he plays, blah blah blah. It's fucking old Tom Chilton or whatever all over again. And I see a change like this with Warlock, and I think it's pretty considerable and notable for all the reasons that you've just said. It's not like this class was shit. Even at the outset of the expansion, these fucking buffs are pretty significant. If a Grand played Warlock, we'd all be going nuts about this. But sorry, I should say, let me rephrase that. If we're going to talk about the Paladin, and yes, Paladin got very good changes as well. But I'm just saying, it's not just the Paladin. And if fucking these changes had been announced for Paladin, and Paladin was in the position that Warlock was in at the start of MoP, people would have gone nuts going like, oh, here we go again, fucking a grand, blah, blah, blah. But here's a class that isn't typically tied to one of the developers getting huge buffs, and people don't get to use their fucking old favorite excuse of, oh, here we go, the devs just fucking love this class because they play it. I had a little bit of a laugh about that.
I used that right at the start of a video.
For Warlock or for Paladin?
Yeah, I said right at the start of a video a few days ago, I want to know what Blizzard developer is playing Affliction
That's
Warlock.
right. Sorry, you did say that. That's right. But like, it's funny you say that because, like, I mean, granted, the team is not tiny. There's fair few people on the team, and I don't know all of them. But Warlock isn't a class I've particularly tied to any of the devs that I know of. So I too would be interested. Who's the influential dev who's playing Warlock that somehow
one of them's re-rolling?
Yeah, that somehow who's re-rolling exactly? Maybe a Grend is re-rolling. Who knows? So very good. Mate, we'll move on to the Paladin now that we've sort of brought it up. Like I said, look, the Paladin did get quite a few buffs as well, and again, it's in the Ret and the Holy department. Now, don't get me wrong, I think Prot players are rather happy as well. I think we'll talk about it, but Paladins across the board got quite the glow up, and again, everyone goes a Grend, here we go, blah blah blah. Double, I'll throw it to you, mate. You can kick us off with Holy, and I'll get Scotty to talk about Ret. Mate, the Holy Paladin, you mentioned in your videos over the last week. Now, Blizzard has addressed there was a little bit of a bug going on, I believe. But even once the bug's corrected, like their mana return now or their mana management is just bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the first change was insane. And even after like a more than 3x nerf, it's still like really insane. So, yeah, their mana management's in a great spot. Kind of similar to Holy Priest, where, like, as I said before, the first round of changes, they were like very conspicuously ignored. And then the second round of changes and the third, they definitely got the attention they needed. And I think Holy's in a really good spot now.
I'll just rattle off some of the changes if you guys don't know about them. Basically, we've got Eternal Flame nerfed by, well, this will all, I'll change. There's a few posts, so just bear with me. Initially, her Eternal Flame nerfed by 28% the periodic healing. The periodic healing can activate Illuminated Healing now, and Illuminated Healing's base value has been raised to 12% from 10%. Also, they got Seal of Insight now correctly. So bug fixes, like I said, the mana was fucked on Seal of Insight. But they increased the base mana restoration by 6%. It was, to 6%. It was 4%. And this is a big one. Crusader Strike's cost for Holy Paladins has been decreased by 20%, bringing it to 12% of base mana, where it was 15%. And they say, well, no, it doesn't matter what they say there. That's just a note fix on the bug. So Zug, that like the Crusader Strike thing was huge because again, it's sort of like, it feels like the Mistweaver thing where they're kind of like, they're leaning into the way the class was sort of intended to be played, quote unquote. I know players love to do what they want and play things outside the box, but it seems to me like they're really saying, guys, look, the Holy Paladin and the Mistweaver Monk are fucking melee classes. Like, yeah, you can be in the back row if you want, but you're kind of dicking yourself if you're not sitting there in melee. So we know you guys traditionally have not played these classes in melee. We're trying to really make this a thing as was originally intended. So do you think that's the case, Zug? And do you think it's going to have effect?
Yeah, this is actually a weird one because previous to the Seal of Insight changes, which is, it's just a seal you put it on, it's like a stance basically. And if you played in Wrath of the Lich King, you'll be familiar with this, where Seal of Wisdom is what it was called back then, where whenever you melee or hit the boss with a melee attack, you have a chance to gain some mana back. And that was gone in Cataclysm. There's no, I mean, it's in Cataclysm, but it's so minor that it basically doesn't matter. And now it's back, and it's very back. It's going to be very important that you have melee uptime. So it's going to play a lot more similar to like Wrath of the Lich King, Holy Paladin. And weirdly enough, before this change, Crusader Strike was actually a very bad button to press for Holy Paladin. And that's like weird, right? It's you think of from Cataclysm to
Yeah.
MoP, like CS is a pretty good button to press in Cata, and
Yeah.
going from that to it being like actively bad is weird. And so now, basically, post the Seal of Insight reversion, Crusader Strike is back to being a good button to press, which I think is overall good for the design of the spec, but it does emphasize being in melee. And your play pattern now is going to be more based around like dumping all your mana during high damage, and then in between damage events, you're going to be meleeing the boss, pressing Crusader Strike and Holy Shock, and just kind of building that mana back up. And I think overall that's a much better playstyle than before, where you were just super reliant on your spirit regen, and you had to play very careful with your mana. I think Holy Paladin is going to feel really, really good, even with the nerfed version of Seal of Insight that we're going to get.
And I forgot to mention the big one, sorry, as well. Devotion Aura cast by a Holy Paladin will now reduce all damage by 20%, was magical damage only before. This is the attempt, again, as you mentioned in your amazing videos, Doublezug, that everyone needs to go and watch right now. Go and find Doublezug on YouTube, as well as, obviously, everyone. Scottejaye on YouTube and Joardee on YouTube, Scottiejaye on Twitch and Kick and all the fucking platforms. Go find everyone, guys. The Devotion Aura change seems to be an attempt to even the playing field in terms of obviously utility and cooldowns. And here I've got, maybe this is the hairiest question of the podcast for you, and Scotty, listen up because I might get you to chime in on this as well. I understand this one, and I think it's great. I applaud it that they've done it. My question with this one that I didn't bring up in the Holy Priest chat was, and the Mistweaver chat, was knowing still that you can change throughput as much as you want to fucking change it. At the end of the day, we all know that basically the raid cooldowns are what makes people pick these meta healers. And also knowing that, you know, I get it. There's always going to be a best choice, and Josh, nothing you can do will change class stacking to the best. Do you think, Zug, that Blizzard should be doing more or less with the healers in terms of addressing raid cooldowns to the point of, okay, how do I say, sorry, this is a very long question, Zug, and thank you for bearing with me. I'm mumbling and fumbling my way through it, but what I'm getting at is, I'm not calling for this because I don't think they should do it, but just for conversation's sake, should Blizzard go as far as saying, all right, clearly Resto, Shaman, and Discipline Priests are going to continue to be getting picked because of their fucking abilities. What if we brought a new ability to, you know, the Paladin, the Shaman, the Mistweaver, or what have you, that is a button to press that actually makes people actually makes people think about what healer they want, rather than defaulting to Disc and Resto Shaman just because of Spirit Link Totem and Spirit Shell and whatnot. Now, again, I can't stress this enough. I don't think they should do this. I think this is a horrible idea, personally. But are all the throughput changes going to do anything, Zug, or do they need to stare at these cooldowns more?
I think it's actually a really interesting, pertinent question. The way that they solve this in retail, I think, is close to what you're suggesting, where there's a lot more homogenization in terms of healing cooldowns.
Yes, which is a concern. Which is a concern.
Yeah, I think my personal biased opinion is the less powerful cooldowns are, the better healing feels. But I'll say that Mists of Pandaria, the rating is designed around cooldowns heavily. I think Scotty will definitely have something to say about that too. You need cooldowns, and the damage that comes out from the bosses is designed around you having cooldowns. So making them less powerful would be overall harmful to the design. I think that, however, people do tend to undervalue HPS cooldowns like Divine Hymn, Tranquility. While they are generally speaking worse than damage reduction cooldowns, the HPS cooldowns still do a very good estimation, and it's if Holy Priest is channeling Divine Hymn, you're much less likely to die than you are. I mean, like it's again not as good as something like Barrier on the whole raid or Devotion or on the whole raid, but it's pretty close. Like unless you literally get
Yeah.
one shot or two shot,
Yeah.
the HBS cooldowns will usually get the job done. So I think the difference there isn't as significant as people think, but I mean, it obviously is significant, right? But I don't know. It's a tough one. It's a really interesting design question that I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. Personally, though, what I would say is taking power away from cooldowns and putting it on spells that cost mana, like your filler, generally makes healing feel better. But again, like MoP is just not designed that way, so it's really hard. This is a really hard balance question that I don't know what the right answer is.
No, you've done really well
Yeah.
because it is hard. Scotty, I'll frame it the same way to you, basically in a much shorter and easier way. Like Zug said, like should Blizzard go down this path like they've done with the Holy Paladin and start looking at the cooldowns and modifying them? Like forget the inventing new ones. I'm just being a dickhead saying that. But should they modify the cooldowns in order to promote class balance? Or just fucking leave it and focus on the throughput?
Yeah, I think it is very difficult, and I think what makes it more difficult than anything, like everything Doublezug said, they're 100% accurate, in my opinion. You know, it really aligns with my thoughts on it all. The one thing I will say, the thing that makes it difficult is 10 and 25 man. You know, when you're trying to balance healers around two different raid sizes, like in 25 man, I think it's absolutely fine to have your more cooldown, you know, cooldown related healers, and then you've got your more throughput healers because you can take it all. You know, you can take two, I don't know, say a Disc Priest, a Resto Shaman, and maybe throw another Resto Shaman in there. So you've got a couple of Spirit Links, you've got a Barrier, you've got, you know, and then you go, right, now let's chuck in a couple of just hard-hitting, heavy throughput healers like a Resto Druid and a Holy Priest. Yeah, you can get all that. But then when you're trying to balance it around 10 man as well, when you're already limited on spots and the cooldowns are equally as important as 25 man, it's not like, oh, because you've got less players, you need less cooldowns. Like, no, the same amount of abilities are going off. So you still need the same amount of cooldowns as a 25 man. Then it becomes difficult. It's like, well, no, we need that barrier. So like, we need to take a Disc Priest. You know, we need a Resto Shaman, which I'll really want to get into in a minute because I'm super, super excited by the Holy Paladin changes, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, out of all of them, even though I play I'm going to be playing a monk, like, well, 3 monks, all as my main. I am so excited by the Paladin changes, and I think adding that 20% physical DR to the to Devora was massive, to the point where our current Holy Paladin in Cataclysm, who's been a Holy Paladin literally since 2019, and even in retail as well, you know, he's going Resto Shaman. You know, he's already been planning on going Resto Shaman. He's done all the private server testing, like everything as Resto Shaman. And I'm even thinking now for a 10-man group, Holy Paladin, you know, with all the utility it brings, because we're not going to have a prop pally, you know, we're going to have a rep pally, but that's fine. You know, getting another 2-hander protections, another 2-hander sacrifices. Devor are now affecting absolutely everything. Their throughput is fucking mental.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. Like the Holy Paladin's healing in this last raid test was like just mind-blowingly good. But the problem is with Heart of Fear, there's a lot of the big mechanics that are physical damage. There's a lot where, you know, Devora wasn't going to be able to do anything anyway. There's a lot of places where it's physical damage that you need raid cooldowns for. So it makes it really difficult. And I know this is a really long-winded answer to basically say I don't know, but when you're trying to tune or balance healers around 2 completely different raid sizes, which ultimately have the same boss encounters, it makes it difficult. I mean, my gut feeling is kind of like homogenization is actually a good thing because of that. I know it's nice to see the difference and go, oh yeah, your Resto Druid hasn't got raid, you know, it hasn't got damage reduction raid cooldowns, but it's got a lot of throughput. Well, now you're basically saying that, okay, you know, they're not as desirable in a 10-man just by design.
Well, maybe we'll keep
Yeah,
it.
I think tuning healing in 10 man is just really hard in general. It's so much harder than 25 man. Tuning healing correctly.
Scotty, we'll keep the ball rolling for you on Holy Paladin, though. Sorry, I didn't realize you're passionate about the Holy Paladin, mate. I mean, as Zug said, the Crusader Strike change, I talked about being Holy Priest curious, you know, recently. But this Crusader Strike changed, again, to the layman like me, I see that and go, oh, well, maybe that'll make me Holy Paladin curious. Like, I really had written off the Holy Paladin and not... I am sounding like a bit of a meta slave in terms of, oh, so the Holy Paladin, you know, wasn't as strong as the other healers, Josh, so you just fucking write it off. You only play what's strong. It's like, no, I play what feels good. And fucking, you know, that Crusader Strike now being cheaper to cast and me being able to get in there and do some melee, like viably, you know what I mean? Like, well, as a Holy Paladin, yeah, that's intriguing. I'll look into it now and test this once it's, you know, now that it's introduced. But other stuff came out there, and, you know, Scotty, on the whole, like, the Holy Paladins, I think you said you saw in the testing, they're fucking pumping now.
Yeah, and they've gone from being, in my opinion, like, again, to put some context around it, I've played a Paladin since, well, 2004. The first character I ever raided Molten Core on was actually a Paladin. You know, a Paladin, Druid, and Monk. You know, those three classes in particular, they're my jam. They're what I still play to this day in retail. All three of them. But the Holy Paladin was one that I would have been being negative about in videos. You know, I'd have been like, yeah, Holy Paladin not really got much place in raids, you know, especially in 10-man. Like in 25-man, sure, I've got a bet, which I'm definitely going to be winning if they stay as they are. But, you know, a viewer on stream said he will bet me 100 subs that there's no more than, I don't know, 5 Holy Paladins in like the first, I don't know, 200 guilds to clear 25 heroic or some shit. I can't remember exactly what the bet was.
Was that bet? When was that bet made?
Say that again.
When did you make the bet before all these changes got announced?
Oh yeah, it was ages ago.
Beautiful.
You know, basing it all off private server stuff.
The fix is in.
The argument was that we play it differently to private servers. On private servers, yes, there would have been absolutely like pretty much no Holy Paladins, you know, in server first clears.
Right.
But that in Classic, I think we're a bit looser when it comes to comps anyway. But you know, I've been very negative about Holy Paladin, not negative about Ret Paladin, because Ret was doing fine before the buffs. Now it's just fucking insane. But Paladin is in a fantastic place, like literally. And Holy, as I say, I am even toying with the idea, because we're going to be running 2 10-mans, one on a Tuesday, one on a Friday, and then our 25-mans at a weekend. And I'm toying with the idea of our Resto Shaman going Holy Pally in the 10-man now, just because of the toolkit that they've got, and that the physical damage reduction coming from Devotion Aura is so much bigger than I think people are letting on.
I agree. Basically giving them barrier.
Really strong.
Yeah. Mate, do you think?
I'll also say that
Gozug.
That HPAL is one of the few healers that has really comfortable mana, and that's valuable qualitatively, because if you mess up on some of these healers where you want to be running really low spirit, if you mess up an like, it's really bad. Whereas on HPAL, you just melee the boss for a little bit, press some Crusader Strike, and you're back to normal, which is a great, like, for progression when people are learning the fights, having easy mana management is really good.
Oh, 100%.
So Scotty, do you reckon this bloke's going to be good for the cash if you win the bet?
Oh, I don't care. I just agreed to it because he was saying that, you know, we're not going to see any Holy Paladins, and I knew even before these changes we would. You know, like I say, you can't go by the private server players that think they know exactly how it's going to be, because Classic just is different. You know, like if we was to say, if it was going to be exactly the same as private servers, the only thing you'd see is Resto Shaman and Dispriests.
Yeah.
Like literally nothing else. In the first 25-man clears, it would be like 3 Resto Shamans and 2 Dispriests. And I think before all of this balancing, that still wouldn't have been the case.
Yeah. I think our connection's getting a bit spotty, but it should be okay. What was I going to say? Oh, by the way, huge congrats, Scotty, from the bottom of my heart, on hitting 100k subs on YouTube. I know it just sounds like I'm fucking advertising your channel, but seriously, congrats.
No, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Hopefully, Scotty's connection sorts itself out soon. Zug, I'll throw this next one to you. Well, actually, it was Ret Paladin I wanted to talk about, and Scotty was the Ret Paladin guy, but... let's see.
Sorry, am I lagging? Am I?
Yeah, you've just gone a bit.
You've gone on your end.
A bit robot. Oh, maybe it's me, because now Double's doing it. Double, can you just say something again?
Testing.
Yeah, I think it's me. All right, that's okay. I'll do my best. Guys, let me see here. We'll talk about the Ret Paladin, because like Scotty said, This is a fucking beastly change. This is not small by any stretch of the imagination. I'll tell you what's happened. They have seen, I mean, kind of similar to what the Druid got in terms of the blanket change. They've just gone, all right, Ret Paladins, Divine Storm, Crusader Strike, Judgment, Hammer of the Righteous, Hammer of Wrath, and Exorcism have all had their damage raised by 10%, and Templar's Verdict is gone up by 20%. That's pretty fucking significant. On top of that, I think that's it. That's it for Ret Paladins. Just, I mean, I say that's it as if it's fucking not much, but that's pretty significant. Scotty, I mean, like you said, you thought that they were like, I know Ret didn't get a shitload of love before this, but it's not like they were bad. They were, I think fine is the perfect word to use for them. But now, what's the fucking story?
Yeah, I mean, they were, before these changes, they were just kind of, yeah, like middle of the pack, you know, sort of just what you'd really expect. They weren't going to be absolutely pumping, but they was going to be doing enough. And I mean, like now, because it don't sound that much. It's 10% on all builders and 20% on Templar's Verdict. But in reality, that is a lot, because 20% on Templar's Verdict, you're pressing Templar's Verdict quite often. I mean, our Ret Pally was sort of bursting on the opener with cooldowns to, like 300k DPS in Heart of Fear, which, in comparison to everybody else, it was a lot. And they're just very, very consistent. They're just in a really good place. It's not such a drastic change where it's going to change your rotation or talent choices or anything like that. But it's just, for a class that wasn't struggling anyway, to see this sort of buff, it's massive.
The burst is absolutely insane when you stack all your cooldowns together, which is incredible. Like, having that damage profile is incredible. Anytime there's any burn phase or anything like that, Ret is going to be disgusting.
Yeah, and it was like the opener, or on Windlord, where we was not Windlord, Blade Lord, where we was Windlord. I'm confusing myself now. Where it'd get the 600% damage amp, and the Ret Pally would have all these cooldowns for that. Like the damage, just watching the boss, he could have almost soloed him. Like, it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, also something to mention about Ret is you don't really think of them as being like a hybrid, but they kind of are. Like, they bring a crazy amount of utility. The Paladin utility is really strong. Double hand stack, double bop. So they don't have to be that good to be bringable, like especially one of.
Yeah, and yeah, the utility, and the fact that utility in more so even in Moggish and Volts, like in Moggish and Volts and Heart of Fear, like there is so many places where bop is like absolutely amazing. So having a Ret that's got that, 2 bops, and having double hand a sack for the tank, Blade Lord, getting rid of wind step, getting rid of pin, like if you get pinned on Spirit Kings, having even purity on Amber Shaper for the debuff. Like, yeah, the Paladin's toolkit is just absolutely insane. As I say, they've only got the 20% magic damage reduction on Devorer as Ret, but even that, on the basis it's not got that positional requirement, because of using something like AMZ. AMZ is stronger, but you have to be stood in it. Having a 20% magical reduction cooldown as well as a DPS that doesn't need everybody to be stacked. Like, Ret Paladin is in a fucking great place.
Fantastic. Guys, we're sort of hitting the home stretch. We've got one more meaty class to talk about in the Shaman, and there's not a whole lot to say about Rogue Warrior Mage, so we'll just sort of gloss over them at the end. But like Scotty said, he's fucking ripping and raring to go on Shaman, so here we go, mate. Look, I presume, Scotty, like resto is what you're probably gagging to talk about, right?
What Shaman? Resto Shaman?
Yeah.
I mean, not really.
Oh, okay, sorry. I thought that was the one that got.
All right, it's probably. probably one of the most boring healers to play, but
Oh, no, sorry.
it's still equally as sick as it was before.
Yeah,
well,
the
that's what I was gonna
changes
say,
are
the
pretty boring
changes.
too. Like, there's so many people in the Shaman Discord, like, just gnashing their teeth and wailing and whining and like, oh, dooming, the sky's falling. Resto Shaman is still incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
It's still stackable. Like, it's totally fine.
Well, that's the question.
The changes were just totally deserved, and it's still incredibly powerful.
That's what I was going to say, Zug, in terms of like, on paper, again, to the layman like me, it reads like a fucking, murder list.
Yeah, it
you
reads
know
like
what
an
I mean?
execution.
Like, yeah, absolutely.
But
Like,
it's-
oh my
yeah.
God, 25% off healing rain. Fucking chain heals fall off is now 20%. It was 0%. Riptide costs 15% more. Healing rain lasts 30 seconds, not 40 anymore. Like, and the ancestral guidance thing lowered to 20%. Like, it's just like, oh my God, look what they've done to my boy. However, I'm sort of not shocked, and your videos have very much so said this as well as you saying it right now, that this is one of your great, like, on paper versus in practice things, where on paper it looks like a massacre, but in practice it is still, like, arguably the go-to healer.
Yeah, you could even nerf Shaman like considerably more, and you would still guarantee take one because the 10% HP buff is just incredible, and it's unique to Shaman. And their cooldowns are just so strong. Like, they're so flexible. They have so many cooldowns. The spec is just, in its fundamental design, so good that the healing numbers cannot be high and would still be taken, but the healing numbers are still really high. So Shaman's totally fine.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I've been saying all along. It's when Blizzard are playing with like the HPS of classes, it's kind of, yes, obviously it's nice to be able to heal more, but it's certainly not because of how much healing a shaman does why you take them to a raid. It's the toolkit.
So, Scotty, before you
Yeah.
said you were gagging to talk about Shaman, was it elemental or enhancement, the minor changes they got, or was it the resto stuff?
Unless I'm really getting into this whiskey harder than I thought. I don't remember once saying I wanted to talk about Shaman.
I promise you, mate, the prosecutor in me is still alive and well, even though I don't do it anymore. And I promise you, about 5 minutes ago, you said I can't wait to talk about Shaman.
I'm pretty sure I was talking about Paladin when I said I can't wait to talk about something. I definitely meant Paladin, even if I said Shaman.
All right, fair enough. Anyway, so that's that enhancement. You got Storm Strike buffed to 450. It was 380, and Elemental Lightning Bolt raised by 10%. That seems nice.
I think the biggest change to DPS Shaman is actually the AG nerf.
Yeah.
Like these little buffs are really nice for their damage. I think enhancement is like maybe a little bit of a sleeper. But the AG nerf is really significant, and it means that I think it's overall really good for healing, because if you were going to be dropping healers and using like DPS cooldowns to cover that healer spot, that's just like not fun for healers in my opinion. So
Yeah.
that change is really good.
So I'll word it better. I mentioned it very lightly just a couple of minutes ago. Basically, the change is that Zug's referencing Ancestral Guidance's healing and damage conversion has been lowered to 20%. It was 60% for healing and 40% for damage. So there you go. Guys, look, I mean, like I said, I got fuck all I think I want to say about the other classes, but I mean, they might be. I mean, the Fury stuff was fun, I guess, for warriors. So the only warrior changes were, absorbing damage or taking damage while in Berserker stance now grants the warrior rage. Previously, it was only taking damage to your health bar that granted rage. So actually, that is an interesting one where I was confused by this. Now, the stance system obviously gets changed in MoP in terms of how it all works. But obviously my understanding was battle stance is you get rage from giving or getting. Berserker stance, you get rage from giving. Now they've changed Berserker stance to be giving or getting as well. I'm confused as to what the difference is between Berserker stance and battle stance now. I'm a fucking idiot. Someone explain this to me.
The change here is it's not that. What it is that if the damage is absorbed by like a power word shield or a spirit shell, that previously wouldn't give you rage, and now they fixed that. So before this, it was still giving you rage. It's just like if you had a Disc Priest in your group that was shielding you, you were just screwed for, you'd have to like have a cancel aura for power word shield and spirit shell and divine aegis. So it's just like a quality of life fix, but it will increase their damage a little bit. The Fury stuff I think is cool. I think it's good. There's a cadre of like a few people who are just freak degenerates who want to force Fury to be playable every expansion. And, you know, I think it's fine if those players have fun. So I like the Fury changes.
Fair enough. Sorry, I fucked that explanation of the stances before. The Warriors will be fucking raging. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, it's a weirdly worded change.
Yeah.
So
Oh no, I get
I'm
that.
sure
But
there's a lot of people who have misunderstood it.
I just fucked up the explanation where I'll fuck it up again now. So, battle stance gives you rage in MoP when you hit something. Is that right? And Berserker stance gives you rage when you take damage. Is that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So yeah, that makes more sense now with the wording of the absorb. Okay. So Fury, they're trying to bring Fury online much quicker than we're used to. The old Fury adage of wait, you know, comes online in later phases. They're really trying to sort of have us consider it a little bit earlier than usual. You know, I'm not sure, Scotty, that what they've done would be necessarily enough. I think you were a bit, skeptical in your latest video, but they've said, look, Crazed Berserker auto attack damage has been increased to 15, it was 10. Crazed Berserker offhand damage increase has been raised to 30, was 25. And the duration of Berserker Rage and Enrage have been raised by 33% to 8 seconds, it was 6. Now, I think, Scotty, you said that's all well and good and everything, but maybe not quite enough. Is that right?
Yeah, and I still pretty much stand by that. It's gonna, like, Fury will just get better and better as you get more access to crit. It's just one of those classes that scales ridiculously well with a specific secondary, you know, like haste for paladins, for example. I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's good that they're, you know, giving it a few tweaks to see what it ends up doing. I still think with the current changes, it's not like, oh, every arms warrior is all of a sudden going to go Fury. Like, I don't think probably quite enough for that to actually happen. But, you know, as long as it gets brought into a reasonable, you know, within a reasonable amount of DPS from arms, I wouldn't say any attempt from Blizzard to make some of the less desirable specs more desirable a bad thing. So I think it's a positive change. But yeah, whether or not it's enough, I suppose, again, time will tell when we get back in the raids next weekend.
Yeah. Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm not ungrateful or poo-pooing this. Any buff or you know, positive class balance is a good thing. You know, sitting here and sort of from the peanut gallery and me saying like, oh, you know, nice try, but not quite enough. Like, it's a try, and they're doing good stuff, which absolutely works. So move on to Rogue, guys. I know fucking nothing about Rogue, but just real quick, we're almost done. We'll just rip through it. Like, Sinister Strike's now 40 energy, not 50. The weapon damage on Sinister Strike is lowered to 192. It was 240, and they say the overall Sinister Strike's cost and damage have both been lowered by 20%. This allows for more fluid gameplay with cycling insight and an overall buff. Assassination, they've got Assassin's Resolve raised to 25%, it was 20, and in combat they've added a counter for Bandit's Guile that will track your Sinister Strikes and Revealing Strikes, showing how close you are to gaining insight. I don't think this moves the needle too much for rogues, does it?
No,
well,
I
a lot
think
was originally saying, oh, sorry, Double, gone you.
I think sub is like just the best spec, kind of like by a lot, but what this looks like they're trying to do is just make it a little bit more closer to Kata, where like you play combat on cleave fights, you can play assassination if you want, and sub is like the best. So I think it's good overall, and making combat less clunky is good because combat's kind of clunky in MoP. So
yeah, and there was a lot of the rogues, you know, diehard rogues that was like, oh, with these changes, you know, specifically the assassination one, it might make it the go-to spec, but I think that was been kind of quickly disproved. I think sub's still going to be the one of the biggest pumpers, full stop, not just biggest pump in rogue spec. I think sub's still going to be, you know, up there in the top 3 overall.
Yeah, I think this is good though. It's sort of similar to like the Warlock changes as well, where they're trying to make it less of like a cost if you want to play the slightly less viable DPS spec on the class. Whereas like now, if you like assassination, it's not going to be that much of a loss. And if you like combat it's not going to be that much of a loss. Because there are some players like that who they really love the one rogue spec and they never want to swap. And I think making it less punishing for those players is a good thing.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, guys, look, last one is Mage. It's only one change, but it probably is a significant one where they've gone one line, combustion percentage of Ignite's tick damage per second raised to 50%. It was 20%. So just you fire mages, you're getting that one buff. And it's a short, sharp, sweet one, but I think, Scotty, it's actually relatively significant because everyone's bitching about fire mages in MoP, and does this change a lot?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know. I'd be lying if I've not played Mage at all. Our Mage, Fui, shout out to Fui, I think he went fire for about 2 pulls and was like, fuck this, and went back to Frost. Like, you know, and yeah, he's a very, very good Mage, by the way. But yeah, he went to fire expecting, you know, big things, and yeah, it still seemed very lackluster compared to Frost. So that's the only thing I've got to really add into that, because it's the only person I've seen actually try it.
Right. So that he tried that post change.
I have zero clue about this either, to be honest.
Fair enough.
I think it's cool though. I think the way that just the design of Fire Mage of like getting a huge dot and spreading it around, it's like it's fundamentally like a cool thing to do in the game, and it's fun when it works, but I don't think this is enough at all to make Fire Mage like playable. And it doesn't change the aspect of the spec of it being like a full slot machine where you're just praying to get a big ignite, which is like, you know, the RNG, like the variance between a good pull on Fire Mage and a bad pull is going to be insanely huge.
Yeah. Scotty, your mate, are you saying he was trying this in the raid testing and didn't like it?
Yeah, it was just significantly lower than Frost.
Yeah, even post change.
I'm not saying he gave it much of a chance. It was like a couple of pulls, and he was like, "I'll go back to Frost."
All good. I mean, of note, not that this fucking means anything. It's, you know, if you like Mage, you like Mage. Just for whatever reason, it's never really taken with me. Mage is the only class in MoP I do not have a character for. So I've got 85s of everything in MoP, and I'll have an 85 monk when I use my Season of Discovery boost. The only class I don't have in MoP is a Mage. It's something about it. I just don't give a fuck. Anyway, guys, that's all the classes. Thank you so much for working through all that. Here's the big question before I let you go. And this might take us 5 or 10 minutes and then we'll finish the podcast. But Scotty, I'll get you to start and we'll get Zug thinking while you're answering. But Scotty, congratulations. You are now, you know, the fucking head of the Classic team. What have we left on the table? What you know, we're ongoing class balancing and changing prior to MoP's release. What is the notable fucking thing that we haven't done yet? What one class or one spec is sitting there staring at Blizzard going, are you fucking serious?
I mean, we've not seen a lot around Marksman Hunter, but well, we're not really seeing a lot around BM Hunter either. I mean, again, it's still early days. I would expect more changes to maybe possibly even go out tonight or be announced tonight, because it's Thursday, isn't it? Normally we hear something on a Thursday night.
Yeah, they come out tomorrow or something, yeah.
Honestly, I don't. They've played around with most classes. There's not a spec where I would like sit here and say I wouldn't take that to a raid. You know, as in a class. I think Fire could do with a little bit more. Again, I've not really seen anything about MM or BM hunters. But outside of that, I can't really think of any, to be honest with you.
All right, Zug, how about you? Is there something outrageous that hasn't been done yet that is so glaringly obvious?
I kind of agree with Scotty. I don't think there's anything, especially from the healer perspective. I think outside of like doing complete redesign of a spec, like maybe Holy Priest is in need of like a total redesign, maybe Discipline, but outside of like a full redesign of a class, I don't think there's anything glaring that they like haven't done. I think they've actually done a pretty good job overall with the healing changes. And with DPS, I don't think there's the one thing I'll say actually is tanking. I kind of just want Blood Decay to be bad for an expansion. So I probably just do that selfishly because I don't like healing Blood Decays. And I think from what I've seen of like, I've watched like some Riani, some subtle videos, and looked at some logs. It seems to me like Blood DK is a little bit ahead in terms of DPS in a way that's like gonna make them the default main tank, which I think is not good. I think tank balance has been pretty bad for a long time, and it being good for an expansion would be really good. So
All right.
a little bit out of my wheelhouse, but that's
no,
my
that's
suggestion.
fine. I can't. I should have thought about this in advance, and now I can't think of anything that I would say. My only one little weird thing, and this is such a non-complaint because it doesn't matter at all, and it's just me being a fucking weirdo. Playing a lot with I never normally play with the default UI, and I'm considering going back to the default UI for the first time in 6 years in MoP because it looks fun, it's old school, I like it, and I'm getting a little bit over Elv UI, but who knows, maybe I'll still use it in PvP, I don't know. But so many of the classes have that thing where you get the graphic notification around your character of, a proc going off or something, like when you've got 5 stacks of it Maelstrom as a shaman and the blue lines appear above your head or whatever, or, your fire mage with the red lines on the side or whatever it might be. Playing a lot with Arms Warrior, I don't know, I feel like it'd be nice if the UI showed me when Colossus Smash. I don't think it does when Colossus Smash is available again, whether it be through sudden death or just the cooldown coming up. I don't think it shows you anything, and I'm like, I'd like my little fancy colored lines for Colossus Smash. But anyway, that's just me being a fucking weirdo. Anyone else got anything weird like that they'd like to see in?
I thought you was going to go along the lines of the retail UI system, fully customizable UI in game.
Oh no, I'd love to see that.
Going.
No, I'd love to see that too.
Yeah, if we could get the retail edit mode, that would be incredible.
Yeah,
because it's annoying to have infinity add-ons to make your UI look good. Like, it makes your load time so much longer. It's just like on retail, you can use almost base UI, and it's totally fine.
Yeah.
Totally usable.
100%.
I don't know about changes. There's information I'd like to know though while we're at it.
Like what?
There's things that I'd like Blizzard to sort of announce because it's getting quite close. We've not had official confirmation on the raid release schedule.
True.
As in, how many weeks are between MSV and Heart of Fear?
Yeah.
Is Terrace coming separate to Heart of Fear, like their post sort of alluded to?
We'll get that just before. We'll get that just before
Valor and
launch.
Conquest cap going to be?
Yeah, true. I reckon they'll tell us about the raids just before launch, like a week or so.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot of little things that would be nice to to actually have confirmation on. Again, like the Valor cap, we're assuming it's going to be a 1600 rolling Valor cap. Are we going to get an extra reset? Are they going to do what they done last time? Where I don't know if you remember, where like for some reason there was like a double reset on EU, so then they gave NA an extra 1600 cap and froze it, and it fucked everyone's UI up, showing how much he was tracking how much he was getting each week. Like, it's more little things like that, in terms of like getting prepped.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, guys, look, we'll wrap it up there. You guys sit tight just for 2 seconds. I just want to chat to fucking Countdown regular and local sweat lord Arcos for a minute here, and then we'll say our goodbyes. Arcos, hello, how are you?
Hey, good. I had no idea you were going to give me speaker previews. I just joined to do some sound settings things with my Discord.
I figured we'd just very, very quickly tell our story from Kata over the last week. So for everyone, basically, Arcos is a sod sweat lord, one of the top guilds in sod progression and speed running and all that shit. He runs the guild, and he's been saying, am I MoP curious or not? I can't figure it out. And I said, come on, mate, I've jumped on EU recently to dick around. Let's get you up to 85 so you can at least, try it out when it launches. And he's like, all right. So he's got his warrior there that he's tanking on at 85, and I've gone, cool, at 80, and I've got my 80 shaman that I'll heal him on and go, let's just spam dungeons for fucking 12 hours and get you up there or however long it takes. Yeah, cool. And we had a wonderful time. The problem was Arcos started getting more confident, and he's like, I don't know anything about Kata. I don't know how to do this shit. He doesn't know any of the dungeons, doesn't know anything. And he started blitzing through it, and he's doing really well. Then he got more and more confident, and the speedrunner in him came out, and he just turned into the tank that never stopped. Now, that's great. It's wonderful to have a fast dungeon. But then I said to Arcos one night, I was like, mate, I have not enjoyed the last 2 hours because I've done every pull at 10% mana. And I'm like, I know it doesn't matter. And we've survived everything. I got us through everything because obviously Shaman can generate mana through Lightning Bolt. And I'm like, it was all good. I was just slightly stressed, even though it's a normal dungeon, because I'm managing my mana the whole time. It's not difficult. It's just lightly stressful. And he's like, you should have let me know. I would have stopped. And I'm like, I didn't want to disappoint the king of WoW, Arcos. You're an imposing presence to be around.
Yeah, really. That surprises me, but yeah, it was really fun. I had no idea you were struggling. There was one dungeon where I checked your mana because I'll track your mana all the time, right?
Yeah.
And you were at 10%, and I just did a question mark. Are you ready? And you said you were fine at 10%, so I just assumed that then at 10% you would just always be fine, right?
Yeah, and I was like, it is doable and it's fine. Like I said, it's a normal level 81 dungeon or whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter. You can do it. But like, we got through some very spicy pulls, which I did have fun with. But I was like, I needed 6 seconds to drink about every 5 minutes. But I was just like, fuck, he's pulled again. Here I go. Oh my God. But no, it was very fun.
It was a good time though.
Yeah, it was good
I
fun.
enjoyed it.
Sounds like a healer problem.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing.
Yeah.
It's always fun in
It's
games
always our fault.
for DPS and tanks. They just get to, like, the tank literally gets to not stop. And like, I've just had a mild issue with, like, in dungeons, the tank that literally doesn't stop. And like, I said to Arcos, like, I'm all for fast dungeons. Go nuts. I'm not here to go slow. That's great. Let's go, and push a little bit. But like, sometimes I will need that 3-tick drink or something. And obviously you can run ahead as the healer and take care of that. But it's a bit harder on the Shaman. You sort of feel a bit left behind. But anyway.
Yeah.
The tank...
Shaman is just so slow in Kata.
It feels
if you were playing
really
a healer with
sluggish.
normal ability, you'd be like cruising.
Yeah.
Shaman is like such a walk. You have to transform into a dog to get your only movement speed boost. And it's like, you have to cast it. It's just...
But you can't...
kinda clunky.
Am I doing
all that
something
stuff
wrong?
is actually changing MoP, right? Because MoP, you get all this movement stuff, and all the healers have really good mobility, which is cool. It's a big upgrade.
Yeah. But yeah, the tank...
Can you hear me again?
Yeah, go for it, mate.
No, I was going to ask, like, you can't drink walk anymore, right? Like, they took that out.
Yeah,
I actually don't know.
I think. Yeah, but like I get the healer POV. I used to speedrun as a disc priest or like as a healing priest. But for me, the fun there is that when the tank is ready to pull again, right? Like when there's 1 or 2 mobs left in the pack, you're already positioned yourself at the next pack, like waiting for the tank. Right?
Oh,
So you're egging the tank on, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I should have not been standing in the back row. I should have been standing on the other side of you, so I'm ahead as opposed to behind.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you like slowly weave your way forward as the pack goes on.
Yeah.
I kind of like that stressful feeling personally. Maybe I'm a freak.
It makes healing more entertaining for sure. Like it gives you, how do you say? Like it gets the heart pumping as a healer when it's so innate as a DPS or a tank that you're like trying to giga pump, right?
I would say
a lot of people misunderstand that. You can find anyone that can 99 powers or that can like pump big damn, right? But finding healers that can innately almost kind of be playing chess, like they're always 2, 3, 4 moves ahead, right? Like they're managing their short CDs, their long CDs, their mana, they're keeping everyone alive and they're positioning themselves to always be ready for the next thing. That's what carries good guilds and good raids, not the Giga DPS 99 parser return.
I know it's only normal dungeons and the low normal dungeons and nothing, and I've done them a million times and whatever. But like, have you used RDF yet without me, Arcos?
No.
Okay, I need you to do.
I refuse to play with random people.
No, I need you to
never
run a
do.
bunch of dungeons with other random healers, and I just want to see what you say about the difference.
Oh, it's worlds apart, especially in Kata. Kata is like probably the expansion where 5-man healing is like that. There's the most gap.
Not
Yeah,
this is
man,
not
I
not to
talked some
suggest
people after
not to suggest
I
that
talked to
I'm
some
a
people after
fucking
our,
god.
thing.
Sorry, so what'd you say, Arcos?
I talked to some people right after we finished, like asking like how much item level do I need to get into the Twilights, and they were all saying like skip the heroics. Like the quality of player in heroics is like legit the bottom barrel of anything you can ever find.
Yeah, but you'll have to to buy the gear.
Yeah, they convinced me to spend like I had like 4k gold total. They convinced me to spend 3k on PvP gear to reach the item level threshold or something. But
it's 100% worth it.
Yeah.
No chance I'm going to be a normal heroic at this point.
Skip the heroics. It's the right call. All right, mate. Well, look, have we got you slightly interested in MoP through your limited playtime so far in Kata?
Honestly, I haven't really looked at MoP per se. I haven't really looked at Kata either. But I think I'm just more open to being there. Like, I don't know really what the raids do or where they are or like what the story is or anything. I'm not really consuming MoP content or trying to figure it out, but I think I'll just keep leveling some characters to 85 and like see where we go.
Fair enough. All right. Well, like I said, I'll be maining NA, but I'll be dabbling maybe in EU. So I'll be interested to see your journey if you do decide to do it. Let's let everyone go and say our goodbyes. Arcos, I'll go you first. Thank you for ducking in and giving us a little bit of a hello.
Of course, man.
And
always happy to chat.
Always a pleasure. Doublezug, mate, thank you so much. You're a fucking legend. Everyone go search for Doublezug on YouTube for your healing content in MoP. He is the best. When it comes to fucking healing, this guy is all over it. Double, what's going on with you content-wise?
I'm going to be dropping guides. I'm trying to get them all out before pre-patch, but it's a lot of work. So I hopefully I don't break that promise, but I am going to be releasing guides for every single healing spec. So that should be interesting.
Very good. Scotty.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Sorry for rambling for like 30 minutes on every healing spec. I just can't help myself.
Mate, don't ever fucking apologize. That's literally what this show is all about, is someone going, all right, cunts, listen up. I've got a 30-minute spiel for you on this very niche topic. Scotty, mate, thank you so much. Again, you no doubt are pumping out the content as well. Joardee was saying, he's fucking under the pump, all the pressure to release a lot of videos prior to release. Scotty, it's funny because I was watching your video after these class changes were announced, and they come out very, very late for you, midnight, 1 a.m, whatever it might be. And to see you, recording in the kitchen, keeping your voice down, feeling the need to get the content out straight away, but not wake up the whole household. My heart went out to you because I was like, I have fucking been there and done that. And I know exactly what's going on in this situation, mate. You're a trooper. Thank you so much for doing it all. How's it been the last week or so with the content?
Yeah, cheers, mate. It's been quite a weird old schedule for me because the majority of the time the news about these class changes and that go out, it's always at the worst possible time. Like I was recording, well, I'd recorded, but I was editing a video about Heart of Fear and Terrace, and it took me ages. It's a 25-minute video or something, and I was halfway through it when the next round of sort of class changes went out, and it was like 4 a.m. So I started recording at 4 a.m, finished editing and uploaded by, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm just finding that I'm just awake and recording or editing all night and then sleeping all day at the moment. That's pretty much my life. But I wouldn't change it. It's great. As I say, for me, it works really well because, I'm sleeping when the kids are at school, and then when they get back, I'm with them till they go to bed. And then when they go to bed, I'm out here and starting, to work on the next video.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got a lot of videos planned. I've still got I've got too many to actually get finished before MoP launches. As in, I've still got a list of about 130, 140 videos.
Jesus.
So I'm not going to get through them all, and it's kind of these class changes are getting in the way. I'm not bothered about making class videos for like every class, because I think that's better left to the people who play those classes intimately, you know, rather than me just playing. I play every class, but I don't know every class intimately because there's too much to know. Do you know what I mean? But I do want to get a Windwalker guide out at the very least, and I'd like to do a Brewmaster guide as well. But at the moment, I'm like trying to hold it off. Like I've been working on the Windwalker guide today, but it still feels slightly too early to put the Windwalker guide out when, you know, it'll be my luck. I'll put it out, and then tonight something will change.
Yeah.
So
that's exactly my feeling too.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a dodgy one at the moment, and I'm trying to like wait maybe till sort of the day before pre-patch or something, and then start getting a couple of the sort of spec specific guides out that I want to do. But yeah, there's loads coming, 10-man guides for all the raids, and so many like videos about, you know, efficient farms for lesser charms, and the list is just endless. But I must admit, I'm chilling for a couple of days, so you're not going to see much from me because I'm going over my brothers for the weekend.
Fair enough. I mean, fucking well, Arcos, what is it? No. What do you want to know?
I want to know if Warrior is better or worse after the changes.
They've not really done much with them. They only really addressed Fury. So were you planning on playing
Prot
Fury?
did get a little bit of a buff. I think Prot Warrior is really solid off tank. And Arms is so, like, the utility they bring is really, really good, and the damage is good, so they're like in a good spot no matter what happens, really.
I forgot about the shield barrier buff. Protection Warrior shield barrier's attack power modifier increased to 2.0, was 1.8. There you go, a little buff, yeah.
Every group's going to want a warrior, like, you know, at least one.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, like warriors
sure.
are insanely good.
Sure, but this might not be the right place to actually take this discussion up. But I'm considering whether I should play my DK or my warrior. And like, if I do play, I'll probably be playing 3 of each, right?
But are you tanking?
Just kind of hesitant.
Yeah, do you want to tank or DPS?
Probably not. I'll probably DPS.
I'd go Arms Warrior personally,
Arms Warrior,
yeah, I think Arms is a lot more fun personally than DK, but
great
DK
utility and great damage.
Unholy is very strong, but Arms Warrior has insane utility and is also really good too. So
yeah, there you go.
Would you
solved.
stack them though? Like, would you take 3 warriors in a 25-man group, or would you just?
Warriors are very stackable.
Easy.
You get the banners, and one of them gives your group a damage bonus, and one of them is like a nice AoE like damage reduction thing. So you also have like a pain suppression type effect. You just have insane tools, really good AoE, and the single target's like pretty good too.
He won't have a GCD for the damage reduction. He's got no time for that. All right, guys, let's wind it up there. Thank you so much again. Thanks to Joardee as well for joining us. I got a lovely message from him while we were still recording without him saying thank you again. Thank you to you, Joardee. And guys, hang about for a second and I'll end the podcast there. Thanks so much again, everyone. All right, stream. I will go off stream as well. Thanks so much, guys. I'll say goodbye to these guys off stream. Appreciate you guys. Catch you next time.